Chapter 24:14. In the distance, the old man who was nailed to the house looked at the woman in the plain dress in astonishment. Of course, he was dumbfounded. One sword. He did not expect that he could not even withstand one sword from the other party. What kind of demon is this? Yi Xian suddenly pulled Qing Er's hand and said with a smile, "Let's go." Being held by Yi Xian, the frost on Qing Er's face instantly melted. She nodded and said softly, "Okay." After saying that, the siblings walked away. Behind them, the old man suddenly said with a trembling voice, "Someone, save me." At this moment, although the sword had disappeared, there was still a sword energy between his eyebrows. That sword energy had locked onto him. The old man was in despair. "I shouldn't have acted tough. Now I've fallen into a trap." Yi Xian pulled Qing Er's hand and walked into the depths of the village. He had to admit that holding Qing Er's hand really gave him a sense of security. There was no fear. At the thought of this, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up involuntarily. After reaching the depths of the village, Yi Xian found that most of the houses in the village were empty. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. In the courtyard of a house on his right, there was a little girl in a black dress sitting on a swing. The little girl's hair was extremely long, reaching the ground. Only half of her face was exposed, and it was very pale. Yi Xian looked at the little girl and withdrew his gaze. Then he pulled Qing Er and continued to walk into the distance. This time, he was here to look for treasures, not to act tough. At this moment, the little girl suddenly laughed sinisterly. Yi Xian frowned and turned to look at the little girl. "Little girl, what are you laughing at?" The little girl looked at Yi Xian and said, "Your death is near." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, "You know how to read fortunes?" The little girl nodded. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Why would my death be near?" The little girl grinned. "Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed." Yi Xian looked down at the Daoist on his waist. "Bye bro, is she right?" After a moment of silence, the Daoist said, "Young Master Yi, she's bragging. The current you is absolutely invincible among invincibles." Yi Xian nodded. "I think so too, huh?" The Daoist. At this time, the little girl suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and Qing Er like a ghost. She looked straight at Yi Xian and said, "Anyone who enters this village can never leave." Yi Xian was puzzled. "But," the little girl giggled, "because this village has an incomparably powerful restriction." As she spoke, she pointed at the exit of the village in the distance. There was a floating black iron sword there. Yi Xian glanced at the black iron sword and said, "This is..." The little girl smiled. "This sword will crush anyone who dares to leave." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he opened his palm. A ray of sword light flew out of the village. However, it had only just arrived at the entrance when it was slashed into pieces by the black iron sword. Yi Xian's expression became solemn when he witnessed this scene, but it instantly returned to normal. "What am I afraid of?" Meanwhile, the little girl suddenly smiled and said, "See, you can't leave." Yi Xian spoke with a serious expression, "Let's make a bet." The little girl frowned slightly. "What do you want to bet?" Yi Xian smiled. "What do you have?" The little girl gazed at Yi Xian for a long time before she said, "Money." As she spoke, she opened her palm, and there was a spatial ring there. There were over 5 billion universe veins within it. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. The little girl grinned. "What do you have?" Yi Xian also opened his palm. There was a storage ring in his palm, and there were exactly 5 billion universe veins in it. The little girl took a deep and long glance at Yi Xian, and then she said, "You can leave now." Yi Xian nodded, and then he took Qing Er's hand and walked out. Yi Xian gazed at the black iron sword and remained silent. Of course, he wasn't afraid. Not to mention a sword, he wouldn't even be afraid even if his father was on guard here. It didn't take long for them to arrive at the entrance of the village. The little girl stared fixedly at Yi Xian and his younger sister. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to walk out of the village with Qing Er. However, the sword didn't move at all. The little girl's eyes opened wide with disbelief when she witnessed this scene. Outside the village, Yi Xian raised his head to glance at the floating sword, and then he smiled. "That sword, actually gave me face. Ha! Xiaoda couldn't help but say, young master, it might have given big sister Tianming face. Yi Xian's face darkened. No one will think you're mute even if you don't speak. Xiaoda was at a loss for words. Meanwhile, the little girl spoke in a low voice. How did you do it? Yi Xian restrained his thoughts and gazed at the little girl with a smile. You've lost. The little girl fell silent. Yi Xian grinned. You wouldn't go back on your word, right? The little girl remained silent for a moment before she opened her palm, and the spatial ring slowly floated over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian didn't refuse and just put the spatial ring away. Meanwhile, the little girl suddenly said, Can you take me out? Yi Xian gazed at the little girl, and her eyes were filled with a pleading expression. Yi Xian smiled, Sure. The little girl was first stunned, and then she was overjoyed. Really? Yi Xian nodded. Come out. The little girl hurriedly ran over, but when she neared the village entrance, she stopped and looked at the black sword with fear. Yi Xian smiled. Don't worry with me around, it wouldn't dare to hurt you. The black sword, the little girl hesitated for a moment, and then slowly walked out of the village. When she walked out of the village, the black sword still didn't budge. Seeing this, the little girl instantly breathed a sigh of relief, and she turned to look at Yi Xian. You're so strong. Yi Xian laughed. Of course. Saying so, he looked at the black sword, and was tempted. Qing suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand and shook her head. It's just a lousy sword, it's meaningless. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then nodded. Okay. Let's go. After saying so, he pulled Qing and was about to leave, but then, as if thinking of something, he turned to look at the little girl. Do you have anywhere else to go? The little girl shook her head. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Then, do you want to go to my academy? The little girl blinked. Academy? Yi Xian nodded, and he quickly took out a wooden token and handed it to the little girl. Come, from now on, you're a student of my Guanxian Academy. The little girl hesitated for a moment, and then said, But I don't really like to study. Yi Xian smiled. It's okay, you can be my fighter. Fighter? The little girl was speechless. The little girl was still a little hesitant, because the man in front of her didn't seem very reliable. Yi Xian smiled. If you're not willing, it's okay. You're free now, you can leave. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. Do you know where this place is? Yi Xian smiled. Myriad Tombs Divine Realm. The little girl shook her head. This place belongs to the Emperor Yin tribe. During the Myriad clan era, the Emperor Yin tribe was invaded by terrifying forces from the boundless universe. In that battle, the entire Emperor Yin tribe was destroyed, and countless clansmen died. The seal has been sealed. Saying that, she shook her head slightly. Very tragic. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Are you also from the Emperor Yin tribe? The little girl was silent for a moment, and then nodded. The Myriad clan era. Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and the Human King's sacred seal appeared in his hand. When she saw the Human King's sacred seal in Yi Xian's hand, the little girl's pupils suddenly shrank. You're the king of the human race. Yi Xian nodded. The little girl looked at Yi Xian, and her expression became strange. King of the human race. You're so weak. Hearing that, Yi Xian's face immediately darkened. What are you saying? What do you mean I'm weak? The little girl giggled. You're only at the high god realm, so weak. Yi Xian was speechless. The little girl said again, Tisk, I really didn't expect to meet the king of the human race here. How many survivors of the human race are there now? Yi Xian shook his head. Not many. The little girl looked sad. Our Emperor Yin doesn't have many left. Yi Xian suddenly asked, Does your Emperor Yin have a king? The little girl shook her head. After the king fell, our Emperor Yin still has no king. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Look at me, do you think I'm suitable to be the king of your Emperor Yin? The little girl looked at Yi Xian in astonishment. You? Yi Xian nodded. The little girl said in a deep voice, You're not from the Emperor Yin. Yi Xian said with a smile, So what? I don't care. The little girl hesitated and then said, We care. Yi Xian, the little girl suddenly said, I'll take you to the Emperor Yin royal city. Yi Xian was puzzled. What for? The little girl said in a deep voice, "That place seems to be sealed now. If you can save the powerhouses of my Emperor Yin tribe, maybe they will really be willing to respect you as king." Yi Xian thought for a while, then nodded, "Okay." The little girl smiled and said, "Let's go." After saying that, she floated directly into the distance. Yi Xian pulled Qing, and hurriedly followed. The little girl kept introducing the Emperor Yin tribe to Yi Xian along the way, and from the little girl, he also learned some things about the Myriad Race era. In the Myriad Race era, there were 3 super races, one of which was the human race. In addition to the human race, there was the heavenly race and the most powerful holy race. It was these 3 races that led the Myriad race to resist the terrifying forces of the boundless universe. Yi Xian was silent. At this moment he was thinking about the Yang clan. If the current Yang clan was placed in the Myriad Race era, what level would it be? Of course, that was if his father was excluded. With his father, the Yang clan would definitely be first, but without his father? Yi Xian shook his head and stopped thinking about this question. Yang clan. Anyway, he would not return to the Yang clan now. Young master? He really did not care too much. At this moment, a sinister laugh suddenly came from afar. The 3 looked over, and not far away, an old man appeared in their line of sight like a ghost. The old man had a hunched back and an aged face. At this moment he was looking at Yi Xian and the others with a sinister smile. Seeing this old man, the little girl's expression became solemn. The old man's gaze suddenly fell on Qing. He looked at Qing and then smiled sinisterly. "So beautiful. This figure." A sword suddenly pierced the old man's eyebrows, and the old man was directly nailed to the spot. The old man's eyes were wide open, and his mind was blank. Pumat. At this moment, Daoist suddenly sighed in a low voice, a max-level bug boss visiting the novice village. Chapter 24:15. Instant kill. Next to Yi Xian, the little girl was completely dumbfounded. She looked at the plain-dressed woman in disbelief, and her mouth opened wide enough to fit an egg. The most dumbfounded person was the old man. He didn't even realize that there was a sword in his head. At this moment, the plain-dressed woman opened her palm, and the old man's storage ring floated in front of her. She picked up the storage ring, turned around, and placed it in Yi Xian's hand. "Yi Xian," the plain-dressed woman smiled. "Let's go." Yi Xian nodded. The 3 of them continued forward. Behind them, the old man was dumbfounded. At this moment, he was locked by a sword light and couldn't move at all. At this moment, he was already extremely shocked. He couldn't fight back at all. Just how powerful was this person? The more he thought about it, the more terrified he became. In the distance, the little girl next to Yi Xian glanced at Qing, from time to time, and her eyes were filled with fear. She finally understood why the black sword didn't dare to attack. It wasn't because of Yi Xian, but because of this woman. The little girl threw Yi Xian a look. This man is a man with a backer. On the way, Yi Xian glanced at the old man's storage ring, and his lips curled up slightly. This old man's storage ring actually contained billions of universe veins. Huge wealth. Yi Xian couldn't help but glance at Qing. It was good to follow Qing. They cleared all the stages. Not long after, the 3 of them arrived in front of an ancient city. This city was very desolate, and the city walls were covered in grass. The entire city was extremely eerie, like a ghost city. At this moment, the little girl suddenly said, "Emperor Yin's city." Looking at Emperor Yin's city, a complicated look flashed through the little girl's eyes. Not long ago, this place was extremely glorious, but now it was so desolate. At this moment, the little girl seemed to have noticed something, and her pupils suddenly constricted. She said in shock, "Be careful. It's a spirit." Just as she said that, a black figure suddenly appeared in the distance. This black figure held a giant sickle, and his long hair dragged on the ground. "Spirit." The little girl looked at the spirit, her eyes filled with fear. "This is a spirit from the boundless universe, and it's a spirit general." Yi Xian looked at the panicking little girl and smiled. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." The little girl. In the distance, the spirit suddenly walked slowly toward Yi Xian and the other two. When he walked toward Yi Xian and the other two, a huge black cloud suddenly appeared above his head, and this black cloud slowly spread toward Yi Xian and the other two. The little girl stared at the spirit and said, "This spirit knows how to die. Do you see that black cloud? That is the death zone of legend. Once one is enveloped by it, then one will be trapped there for eternity, unable to reincarnate." Yi Xian nodded and looked at the spirit. "It's not too late if you surrender now." The little girl turned to look at Yi Xian in shock. At this time, the spirit suddenly turned into a shadow and disappeared. In an instant, the black cloud appeared above Yi Xian and the other two, and at the same time, a blood-red light directly slashed at Yi Xian's throat. Yi Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. At this moment, he felt like his head was flying out. This slash was faster than anything. Yi Xian was shocked. What kind of terrifying speed was this? He didn't even have the strength to fight back. Just when the red light was half an inch away from Yi Xian's throat, all of a sudden, the distant city wall trembled violently, and then, a shadow was nailed to the city wall. It was the spirit. At this moment, the spirit was nailed to the city wall by a sword. Above Yi Xian and the other two, the black cloud had disappeared without a trace, as if it had never appeared. Next to Yi Xian, the little girl was dumbfounded. Soon, she turned to look at the woman in the plain dress. Yi Xian, Qing'er's expression was calm. She glanced at the little girl. "What's wrong?" The little girl gulped and then said, You're so powerful?" Nodded, "Yes." The little girl. In the distance, the spirit suddenly hoarsely said, "Who are you?" The voice was full of fear. Yi Xian smiled. "Yi Xian." The spirit said, "I didn't ask you." Yi Xian's expression froze, and then he shook his head. Kill him. This person doesn't know any better." Flicked her sleeves. Boom. The spirit was directly erased. The little girl glanced at Yi Xian, but did not speak. She finally saw it. Although this man's strength was not as strong as this woman was very obedient to this man. At this time, opened her palm, and a storage ring slowly floated into her hand. Then, she placed the ring in Yi Xian's palm. Yi Xian laughed, and then he pulled toward the distant city. At this time, the little girl suddenly said, "Careful, there's a restriction." As soon as she spoke, flicked her sleeves. Boom. In an instant, the entire city wall collapsed, along with countless mysterious black runes. In other words, with this wave of the hand, all the restrictions in the city disappeared in an instant. Seeing this scene, the little girl collapsed to the ground, paralyzed. Oh my! After entering the city, Yi Xian found that the city was in ruins. Not only that, but there were corpses everywhere on the streets. Some of the corpses were intact, but others were piles of bones. "It's been too long." Holding Qing's hand tightly, Yi Xian said softly, "It seems that a terrible battle took place here." Qing glanced at the surroundings with a calm expression. Suddenly, a terrifying aura spread from the end of the street. Yi Xian frowned. This aura was the same as the one from before. Clearly, it was another spirit. Meanwhile, a figure appeared in front of Yi Xian and Qing. That figure was just about to speak when a sword suddenly flew over, and it didn't even have the chance to react before the sword pierced through the center of the figure's forehead. The shadow was instantly nailed to the roof of a house. Qing opened her palm, and a storage ring flew out of the spirit's body and into her hand. Then, she placed the ring in Yi Xian's palm. Yi Xian. At the side, the little girl looked at the woman in the plain dress with a strange expression. In the distance, the spirit suddenly cried out in horror, "Who are you?" Yi Xian smiled faintly. "Yi Xian." The spirit suddenly shouted angrily, "I didn't ask you." Her frowned and flicked her sleeves. Boom. The spirit was erased. The little girl looked at Yi Xian in silence. Qing suddenly pulled Yi Xian into the distance. Before long, Qing and Yi Xian came to a square. There was a huge stone pillar in the square, and a middle-aged man was stuck on top of it. Seeing the middle-aged man, the little girl suddenly said in a trembling voice, "Clan leader. The clan leader of the Imperial Yin tribe." Yi Xian looked at the clan leader. He had to admit that the clan leader was miserable. He had been hung like this for God knows how many years. It seemed that when the myriad races fought against the mysterious forces of the boundless universe, it was not a simple tragedy. At this moment, the chieftain of the divine Yin tribe opened his eyes slowly. He looked at Yi Xian directly. "King of the human clan." Yi Xian nodded. After a moment of silence, the clan leader said, "The human race has a successor." At this time, the little girl suddenly said, "Clan leader, does the clan leader still have hope?" The clan leader looked into the distance and laughed at himself. "The clan leader has no hope." The little girl hurriedly pointed at Yi Xian. "Clan leader, let him be the clan leader. If he is the king of the clan leader will have hope." She finally understood. Although Yi Xian was not particularly powerful, the woman next to Yi Xian was really fierce. Hearing this, the clan leader looked at Yi Xian. He hesitated and was about to speak, but the little girl hurriedly said, "Clan leader, don't look at him. Look at this big sister." Yi Xian's face was filled with black lines. Hearing the little girl's words, the patriarch of the Emperor Yin tribe looked at the plain-dressed woman. Looking at the plain-dressed woman, the patriarch of the Emperor Yin tribe frowned slightly because he couldn't see through the plain-dressed woman. Meanwhile, the little girl suddenly said, "Clan leader, don't worry about it. In any case, the clan leader is already in this state. There's nothing to lose. Just let this little brother be the clan leader." The clan leader was slightly hesitant. Although the clan leader's power was gone, they still had some resources. He naturally couldn't be at ease to hand it over to someone who wasn't part of the clan. The little girl was anxious when she saw the clan leader hesitate. The little girl hurriedly said, "Clan leader, you won't get another chance if you miss this opportunity." Suddenly, the bottom of the stone pillar wriggled, and it didn't take long for a shadow to float up. Yin spirit. This Yin spirit had a violet ribbon wrapped around his forehead, and the scythe in his hand was crimson gold. The little girl's expression suddenly changed when she saw this Yin spirit, and she ran over to Yi Xian's side. However, she seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly ran over to Qing's side. Yi Xian was speechless. The little girl spoke solemnly, "This is a high-rank spirit general. His strength is extremely terrifying." Her voice was filled with terror. She'd witnessed how terrifying a high-rank spirit general was in that battle all those years ago. A high-rank spirit general had charged into the clan leader's territory and slaughtered them like a madman. It was a massacre. That scene had become a nightmare that she couldn't get rid of. Qing'er looked at the little girl. When she saw Qing'er look over, the little girl hesitated for a moment before she said, "Big sister, this one is very powerful. You have to be careful." Qing'er nodded. "All right." Yi Xian was speechless. The high-rank spirit general suddenly spoke in a hoarse voice, "Become the king of the clan leader?" As he spoke, he looked at Yi Xian. "Are you sure?" Yi Xian nodded. "I'm sure." The high-rank spirit general sneered. "What right do you have?" Yi Xian thought for a moment, then held Qing'er's hand and waved it. "My sister." The high-rank spirit general turned to look at Qing. When he saw the walking sword hovering beside Qing'er, he sneered. "Woman, come, I'll let you have 3 strikes." Yi Xian was speechless. 7017K. Chapter 24:16. 3 strikes from her. Yi Xian fell silent. 3 strikes from Qing'er? Even if his father and big brother put together, they wouldn't dare to say that. The last person to be so arrogant was probably Tianyi. Now, the grass on Tianyi's grave was over 10 m tall. Yi Xian gave the high-rank spirit general a thumbs up. "I admire your courage." As he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at Qing'er, why can't they sense how strong you are? Qing'er thought for a moment and said, "I'm too weak." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "Qing'er is an eternal god." The corners of Qing's mouth curled up slightly when she heard this, and it was truly a peerlessly beautiful smile. Yi Xian was stunned by this sight. A short moment later, he lightly stroked Qing Er's face and said softly, "Qing Er, you can smile more." Er gazed at Yi Xian. "I only smile at you." Yi Xian roared with laughter, and his heart was warm like a sunny day. Too weak. Meanwhile, the high-rank spirit general spoke abruptly. "Woman, are you talking about me?" Qing Er gazed at the high-rank spirit general. In the next moment, a sword suddenly pierced through the high-rank spirit general's forehead. In an instant, the high-rank spirit general's body was nailed to the spot, and he was unable to move. The high-rank spirit general's mind went blank. "What's wrong with me?" Puma. Qing Er gazed at the high-rank spirit general with an expressionless face. "Do you have a problem with saying you're weak?" The high-rank spirit general gazed at Qing Er with astonishment, and his gaze seemed as if he'd seen a ghost. He wasn't a small fry in the spirit of Yin clan, he was a high-rank spirit general. It could be said that he could be considered as an expert amongst the spirit of Yin clan. However, at this moment, he'd actually been instantly killed by a single sword strike. He didn't even have the ability to fight back. The high-rank spirit general was completely stunned. The little girl beside Yi Xian looked at the plain-dressed woman with widened eyes. Apart from shock, there was also admiration in her eyes. This was too ferocious. No matter who it was, it would only take one sword strike. At this moment, a black seal suddenly floated in front of Yi Xian. This seal was completely black and about the size of a palm. On top of the seal were two large words, Emperor Yin. Yi Xian glanced at the seal, and then he looked up at the patriarch of the Imperial Yin tribe. The patriarch spoke in a trembling voice, "Young friend, from now on, you are the king of my Imperial Yin tribe." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he smiled and said, "Senior, don't you want to think about it?" The patriarch of the Imperial Yin tribe hurriedly shook his head. No need to think about it. After he saw the woman in a simple dress attack, he'd already understood how terrifying she was. Not to mention a tiny high-rank spirit knight, even if he was at his peak, he would probably not be a match for her. Yi Xian was silent. The patriarch of the Imperial Yin tribe continued, "Everything of my Imperial Yin tribe is within this seal. From now onward, all members of my Imperial Yin tribe must obey your orders." Yi Xian glanced at the seal, and then his eyelids twitched. He hurriedly put the seal away and spoke seriously, "Don't worry, senior. I'll definitely lead the Imperial Yin tribe to glory." The patriarch of the Imperial Yin tribe glanced at the Qing Er and said, "I believe in you." As he spoke, his figure gradually became ethereal. Yi Xian fell silent. Many members of the Imperial Yin tribe had perished at a young age. It was only a strand of consciousness that was holding on now. Now that that strand of consciousness had been exhausted, it was naturally time for it to vanish from this world. The high-rank spirit knight suddenly spoke in a trembling voice, "Who are you?" Yi Xian restrained his thoughts and glanced at the high-rank spirit knight. "Yi Xian." The little girl's expression instantly became strange. The high-rank spirit knight turned to look at Yi Xian. "No. This." He wasn't even able to finish speaking before he was obliterated. Qing Er opened her palm, and a spatial ring slowly floated into her hand. Just like before, she placed it in Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He put the spatial ring away, and then he took a look at his current wealth. He had over 90 billion universe veins now. Previously, the human race had 40 billion time veins, and the Emperor Yin tribe had more than 40 billion time veins. Adding on the storage rings that he had just obtained, he now had more than 90 billion time veins. In addition, he also had the god objects of the two races. The Imperial Yin tribe had tens of thousands of divine treasures, and they had all sorts of divine treasures. Right now, he had both money and equipment. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian gazed at the little girl by his side. "Help me gather all the experts of the Imperial Yin tribe in the city." The little girl hesitated for a moment and said, "It's dangerous. There are still some Yin spirits in the city." Yi Xian turned to look at Qing Er, and Qing Er nodded slightly. She opened her palm, and then the walk sword suddenly shot into the sky. In the next moment, the walk sword spun around and shot into the city. Bang! In an instant, countless shrill cries resounded throughout the city. This attack had eliminated all the Yin spirits in the city. The little girl gazed at Qing with a trace of terror in her eyes. She couldn't imagine the strength of this woman before her. Right at this moment, a furious shout resounded from within the city. "How dare you!" As soon as the voice resounded, a figure suddenly appeared not too far away from Yi Xian and Qing. The figure gradually condensed, and it was a Yin spirit as well. The Yin spirit glared angrily at Qing. Who exactly are you?" Qing's expression was calm. "Guess." Yi Xian was astounded, and then he shook his head and chuckled. Qing is really getting more and more mischievous. The Yin spirit gazed at Qing, and there was a trace of fear in his eyes. "You're not from the Imperial Yin tribe." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly turned around and transformed into a shadow that vanished into the sky. Obviously, he'd confirmed with his eyes that this was someone he couldn't defeat. Meanwhile, Qing opened her palm, and the walk sword vanished. In an instant, the spot where the Yin spirit stood split open, and then a shrill cry resounded. After that, a strange scene appeared. The Yin spirit who'd fled had suddenly appeared on the spot like a ghost, and there was a sword stuck in the center of his forehead. Yi Xian and the little girl were both struck dumb at the sight of that. The person who fled has actually appeared here again? The Yin spirit seemed as if he'd seen a ghost, and he spoke with terror. "How could you?" Qing flicked her sleeve. Bang! The spirit disappeared. Qing opened her palm and a storage ring slowly floated into her hand. She then turned around and placed it in Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian was speechless. The young girl glanced at Qing and said, "I'll go gather the clansmen." With that, she turned around and left. Excitement. With this woman's protection, the Emperor Yin tribe would definitely rise. Yi Xian was curious. "Qing, what was that sword move of yours just now?" Qing smiled. "Slash it." Yi Xian said solemnly, "I will also slash, but it will be different from yours." Qing pondered for a moment and said, "There's a small gap in strength between us right now." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. A little. Qing took Yi Xian's hand and said with a smile, "You're already very outstanding." Yi Xian nodded. "I will work hard." Qing blinked. "You don't have to work so hard." Yi Xian smiled. "Why?" Qing's lips curled up. "I'll support you." Yi Xian. Not long after, the young girl gathered all the Emperor Yin tribe's experts in the city. There weren't many left, only less than 300 people. And these 300 people weren't very strong because the Emperor Yin tribe's true experts had almost all died in battle. The young girl led the Emperor Yin tribe's experts to Yi Xian and said, "Greetings, Patriarch." With that, she took the lead and bowed deeply. However, the Emperor Yin tribe's experts gazed curiously at Yi Xian. None of them bowed, and some of them even had vigilance in their eyes. The young girl frowned when she saw this. She was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm, and the seal that the Patriarch of the Spirit of Yin tribe had given him appeared in his hand. He glanced at them and smiled. "From this moment onward, I'm the Patriarch of the Spirit of Yin tribe. If any of you aren't convinced, then fight my younger sister first. Right? You can only fight me if you can defeat my younger sister." Qing was speechless. The young girl gazed at Yi Xian with astonishment on her face. "I'm not convinced." Right at this moment, a man from the Emperor Yin tribe stepped forward, and he gazed at Qing. "I'll fight you." Yi Xian hurriedly pulled on Qing's hand and said softly, "Don't kill him." Qing nodded. She gazed at the man who'd spoken. "Can we begin?" The man stared at Qing. "Yes." He'd only just finished speaking when a sword pierced through the center of his forehead. Qing's expression was calm. "It's over." All of them were stunned. The man who'd been nailed by the sword was stunned as well. "I was killed in an instant just like that?" Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Is there anyone who's dissatisfied?" Dissatisfied? The expressions of all the experts from the Emperor Yin tribe became unsightly when they heard this. He'd nailed the man there with a single strike. How could anyone dare to be dissatisfied? Yi Xian smiled. So all of you have no objections? All of them exchanged glances. Yi Xian suddenly gazed at the man who'd been nailed by the sword. Do you have any objections? The man hurriedly spoke in a trembling voice. No. No objections. Yi Xian nodded, and then he opened his palm, causing the walk sword of the Tao to fly into his grasp. Yi Xian was struck dumb at the sight of this. When did the walk sword give me so much face? As if he knew what Yi Xian was thinking, Xiaota suddenly said, Young master, how could it not give you face? Big sister Tianming is here. If it dares to not give you face, then big sister Tianming will probably break it. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the little girl suddenly said, Greetings, patriarch. The experts of the Emperor Yin tribe gazed at the woman in a plain dress. Obviously, they felt that Qing was more suitable to be the patriarch. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, Let me ask all of you a question. If even the younger sister is so strong, then the older brother. Think about it. Qing was speechless. The experts of the Emperor Yin tribe exchanged glances, and then they hurriedly bowed deeply to Yi Xian and spoke in unison, Greetings, patriarch. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. P.S. Sorry, the update was a bit late. I'm really sorry. Due to an unexpected situation, my computer suddenly turned blue. I ran to the internet cafe to update it. 7017K. Chapter 2417. Patriarch. Just like that, Yi Xian smoothly took over the Imperial Yin tribe. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian turned to Qing. Qing, what is the realm above supremacy? Realm. He had to admit that he was having a mental breakdown at the mention of realms. There were too many realms. Qing shook her head. Yi Xian was surprised. You don't know. Qing smiled. Realms are a kind of restraint, a kind of rule. I am no longer in realms, and I have no interest in them. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. He looked at the little girl next to him. What's your name? The little girl smiled. Di Lang. Yi Xian nodded. Can you tell me more about this realm? The little girl nodded. Supremacy is divided into 9 realms. Each realm represents 1,000,000 years of cultivation. Above the supreme god is the legendary freedom. Yi Xian frowned. Freedom? Di Lang nodded solemnly. That is, you are no longer bound by the power of faith. You are truly free. Experts of this level could be said to have surpassed the power of faith and reached another level. There were many experts of this level in the era of the myriad races, but in this era, she shook her head. I'm afraid there are very, very few. Freedom. Yi Xian thought about it and nodded. Di Lang glanced at Qing and spoke softly, Big sister, are you an expert above the unfettered realm? Qing looked at Di Lang. No. Di Lang wanted to say something, but Qing said, The one hanging just now is your patriarch, right? Di Lang said, Yes. Qing looked at Di Lang. Do you think he's strong? Di Lang nodded. Of course. Above freedom is the virtual self realm, and above virtual self realm is the legendary true self realm. The true self realm transcends faith and matter. The body, consciousness, and soul reach the true self. An expert of this level is... Qing suddenly said, That's quite weak. Di Lang's expression froze. Yi Xian laughed. It had to be said that Qing was getting naughtier and naughtier. Yi Xian restrained his thoughts and glanced at the experts of the Imperial Yin clan. Miss Di Lang, are any of them at the realm of true self? Di Lang shook his head. Yi Xian asked again, Is there a virtual self realm? Di Lang shook his head again. Yi Xian's face sank. What about the unfettered state? Di Lang hesitated for a moment before he said, Just one at the half-step freedom realm. Yi Xian was speechless. Di Lang smiled bitterly. Back then, we had 3 true self-realm cultivators and many virtual self-realm cultivators. As she spoke, her expression darkened. We lost that battle too badly. Yi Xian said solemnly, Are your opponents the spirits of 9 Yin clan? Di Lang shook her head. The spirits of 9 Yin clan is just a small fry. There are more terrifying ones. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian in confusion. You're the king of the human race. Don't you know? Yi Xian said solemnly, that old man didn't tell me. Di Lang, Yi Xian suddenly said, forget it. Let's not talk about this. Miss Di Lang, take your clansmen to the Universe of Gods Guan Xian Academy. When you get there, my sister will receive you and make arrangements for you. Di Lang blinked. You have a sister? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Di Lang's expression became strange. Yi Xian smiled. When you get there, you must live well. Otherwise, Qing Qiu was not to be trifled with. Di Lang nodded. Since we recognize you as our clan leader, we will definitely listen to you. In any case, we can't beat your sister. Yi Xian was speechless. So you listen to me because you are afraid of my sister. Moments later, Di Lang left with the experts of the Heavenly Yin clan. Now that the seal on this place had been lifted, the Heavenly Yin clan were free. Now, they could only follow Yi Xian because they knew that the terrifying forces of the boundless universe might come again. Now that the Heavenly Yin clan was in such a state, if they did not ride on their coattails, they could only wait for death. After Di Lang and the others left, only Yi Xian and Qing were left. Yi Xian looked around and smiled. Qing, this trip to the mystic realm was extraordinarily smooth. There had been no accidents along the way. With Qing around, it was awesome. Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, the sky in the distance suddenly split open, and the next moment, a figure silently appeared. Yi Xian looked at the figure in surprise. The shadow that came was a spirit. However, it was not the real body, but an illusion. The figure looked down at Qing and said hoarsely, how dare you kill a spirit of the Heavenly Yin clan? Qing nodded. Of course I dare. The figure was silent for a moment, then said, woman, you will pay an unimaginable price for this in the future. With that, he was about to disappear. At this moment, Qing suddenly opened her palm, and the walking sword flew out. The walking sword suddenly sank into the forehead of the illusory figure. Almost at the same time, in a huge city in the clouds somewhere in the boundless universe, a shrill scream resounded. The next moment, a sword light shot up into the sky from the city. Boom! In an instant, the city in the clouds was reduced to ashes. In the boundless universe, countless terrifying experts turned to look at the city in the clouds. Myriad Tombs God Realm. The figure pinned by Qing's sword looked at the plain-dressed woman in horror. What did you do? Qing's expression was calm. She took Yi Xian's hand and turned to leave. At this time, Daoist's voice suddenly sounded. Idiot, do you think this is the Milky Way? In front of her, you have to pay for your words. The illusory figure. Yi Xian took Qing to the next secret realm, the Sky Burial Grounds. In the starry sky, Yi Xian flew on his sword. Qing stood beside him, holding his hand tightly. Yi Xian suddenly said, Qing, I haven't asked you yet. Why did you suddenly appear? Qing turned to look at Yi Xian. I missed you. Yi Xian was slightly stunned. Then he shook his head and smiled. Me too. In this world, only Qing's kindness to her was unreserved and without any ulterior motives. The purest. After a moment, Yi Xian suddenly asked, Brother Bai, what's going on with the boundless universe? Daoist was silent for a moment. I don't know. Yi Xian frowned. You don't know. Daoist said, I don't care about that. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Not under your control? Are you kidding me? Daoist sighed in a low voice. I really don't care about that. It's a bit special. Master is in charge. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. Can you ask your master to take care of that side and stop them from bullying me? Daoist said, Master doesn't care about that side now either. Yi Xian was not in a hurry. Why? Daoist said in a low voice, Big brother, I'm just a pen. How would I know so much? Yi Xian was speechless. This lousy pen learned from Xiaoda. It's a pen when you act cool, and a pen when you don't know anything. Yi Xian glanced at Qing beside him. He was a little hesitant. Should he bring Qing for a stroll around the boundless universe? After a stroll around, who would dare to touch him? At this moment, an angry roar from afar interrupted Yi Xian's thoughts. Yi Xian looked into the distance. In the depths of the starry sky, a man and a demon were fighting. The demon was huge. It was tens of thousands of feet tall. It looked like an ape with 2 legs, 2 arms, and a tail. The one fighting it was a woman in a white dress. The battle between the man and the demon was quite intense. Yi Xian had no intention of interfering, and he just led Qing towards the other side. But right at this moment, the woman in a white dress was suddenly blasted flying by the demon beast's punch. After it blasted the woman flying, the demon beast smashed its fist forward once more. An extremely terrifying force instantly swept through the surroundings. In an instant, the entire starry sky seethed while countless strands of starlight were obliterated. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched when he witnessed this scene. This demon beast is really ferocious. Meanwhile, the woman in a white dress suddenly formed a seal with her fingers, and then she pointed forward. In an instant, countless golden talismans suddenly surged out. Rumble! In an instant, the demon beast's body exploded apart, and then it was blasted back repeatedly. Meanwhile, most of the golden talismans flew towards Yi Xian and Qing. Yi Xian was shocked when he witnessed this scene, and he was about to lend a hand. Meanwhile, the woman in a white dress suddenly shouted furiously, "Stop!" As soon as she finished speaking, the golden talismans stopped around 100 m away from Yi Xian and Qing. Meanwhile, the woman in a white dress suddenly formed a seal with her fingers, "World Borrowing Dao." As soon as she finished speaking, an enormous net of golden talismans enveloped the demon beast, and then strands of terrifying energy seeped out from within the net and smashed against the demon beast. It didn't take long for the demon beast to let out a shrill and miserable cry. However, the energy of the talismans didn't weaken at all, and they grew in number instead. Just like that, it didn't take long for the demon beast to be on its last breath. At this time, the woman in a white dress took out a small pot, and with a light touch, the demon beast was sucked into the small pot. After that, she suddenly looked at Yi Xian and Qing. She took a step forward and came before Yi Xian and Qing. Looking at Yi Xian, she frowned slightly. "Upper God Realm." Yi Xian nodded. The woman in a white dress looked at Yi Xian. "You're just a puny Upper God Realm cultivator. How dare you come here?" Yi Xian smiled faintly. "I'm here to handle some matters." "Young lady, who are you?" The woman in a white dress said calmly, "Celestial Master Sect." Yi Xian fell silent. "Never heard of it." The woman in a white dress was about to speak, but at this time, the starry sky in the distance suddenly shook violently, like a great earthquake. At the same time, a terrifying and powerful aura swept over. Seeing this scene, the woman in a white dress narrowed her eyes slightly. The legendary Eternal Demon Emperor. Having said that, she turned to Yi Xian and Qing. This demon is very strong. You guys go first." Yi Xian asked, "Can you beat it?" The woman in a white dress shook her head, her expression incomparably grave. "No. But I can delay it for a while." Yi Xian thought about it, then said, "Then why not let my sister fight it?" The woman in a white dress looked at Qing. Her." Yi Xian nodded. The woman in a white dress sized up Qing for a moment, then asked, "Do you know how to fight?" Shook her head. "No." The woman in a white dress was stunned. Shook her head. "I only know how to kill." Yi Xian. 7017K. Chapter 24:18. They only know how to kill. The woman was first stunned when she heard Qing, and then she frowned slightly. She sized Qing up carefully again, and it didn't take long for her expression to become solemn. At this moment, she noticed to her astonishment that she couldn't sense Qing's aura. She was at the peak of the carefree realm right now, but she actually couldn't see through the woman before her. That was truly unusual. The woman sized Qing up again, and a wisp of hesitation flashed through her eyes. She seemed to be considering something. Suddenly, The starry sky in the distance seethed, and then the space in front of them suddenly split apart. After that, a middle-aged man appeared not too far away from them. The middle-aged man had long hair that hung loosely on his shoulders, and his hands were placed behind his back. There was a crack in the center of his brows, and he emanated an extremely terrifying aura. The shocked woman restrained her thoughts when she saw the middle-aged man, and her expression gradually became solemn. The middle-aged man glanced at her emotionlessly. The Celestial Master Sect. What a bunch of sanctimonious hypocrites. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly clenched his right fist. Bang! A terrifying aura instantly enveloped the woman in a white dress. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and she was just about to attack. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man suddenly gazed at Xian and Qing. He frowned slightly when he saw Qing. Demon beasts were extremely sensitive to danger. He suddenly felt slightly uneasy when he saw Qing. Xian suddenly withdrew his gaze and smiled. Qing, let's go. He had no intention of interfering in the enmity between this human and demon. Even though the woman in a white dress had shown them kindness earlier, it didn't represent that he would trust her. After all, anyone who was able to attain such a realm of cultivation wasn't simple at all. It was best to be vigilant in the outside world. One shouldn't have the intention to harm others, but one should always be vigilant against others. The middle-aged man was stunned when he saw that Xian and Qing intended to leave, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he heaved a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, the woman in a white dress suddenly said, "Wait." Xian turned around to look at the white-dressed lady and asked with a smile, "What's the matter?" The woman in a white dress thought for a moment, and then she smiled and said, "Where are the two of you going?" Xian said, "Let's walk around." The woman glanced at Xian, and then she smiled and said, "May I know your name, young master?" Xian smiled and said, "Xian." The white-dressed woman smiled faintly. "I see that you are extremely talented. Are you interested in joining the Celestial Master Sect?" Join the Celestial Master Sect. Xian was stunned, and he was about to speak when the middle-aged man suddenly said, "Young brother, do you have any treasures in your possession?" Xian looked at the middle-aged man. "Why do you say that?" The middle-aged man chuckled. "This woman has the god's eye. She must have discovered that little brother is carrying some kind of divine item. She invited you to the Celestial Master Sect because she wants to kill you and seize your treasures. Or perhaps, she's buying time and waiting for the experts of the Celestial Master Sect to arrive." Xian hurriedly said with a serious expression, "Senior, that's impossible. She's so beautiful, so how could she possibly be such a malicious person?" The middle-aged man was stunned, and then he shook his head and sighed, "Young man, you're still too simple. I'm still too naive. This world is very complicated." Xian spoke seriously, "I don't believe that this beauty is such a malicious person." He gazed at the woman as he spoke, "Right?" The woman blinked, "Of course. How could I possibly be such a malicious person?" Xian smiled, and then he gazed at the middle-aged man. "Senior, look, she said that she's not such a person." The middle-aged man sighed softly, "I'm afraid there's no one else in this world that's as pure as you." Xian was speechless. "What the fuck?" The Daoist spoke abruptly, "What the fuck?" The woman glanced at Xian with a spurious smile on her face, and no one knew what she was thinking. Suddenly, a few terrifying auras arose from the depths of the starry sky. The middle-aged man's face instantly fell when he witnessed this scene. The experts of the Celestial Master Sect have arrived. It didn't take long for an old man and a beautiful woman to appear here. Both of them wore black robes, and their gazes descended onto the middle-aged man as soon as they appeared. The woman suddenly turned to look at Xian when she saw them, and she smiled, "Young brother, are you coming to my Celestial Master Sect?" Xian hurriedly shook his head, "No." The woman gazed at Xian, and the smile on her face grew even more strange. "I think it's better for you to go." Xian gazed at her with terror. You're a bad person." The woman roared with laughter. "Is there any difference between good and bad in this world? It's just a matter of who's stronger and who's weaker." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. There's no enmity between us, so why are you doing this? A wisp of excitement flashed through the woman's eyes. You have many divine treasures, right? Yi Xian nodded. The corners of the woman's mouth curled up slightly. I'm sorry, but I've taken a liking to your divine treasures. Yi Xian sighed softly. Young miss, what you're doing is wrong. There's right and wrong in this world. The woman spoke abruptly. I don't want to listen to your nonsense. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he turned to look at Qing. Qing, you do it. Qing nodded and opened her palm. The woman didn't even have time to react before a sword pierced through the center of her forehead. A strand of blood sprayed out from the back of her head. The expressions of everyone here changed violently when they witnessed this scene. The woman's eyes even opened wide as if she'd been struck by lightning, and her mind went blank. What's wrong with me? Why can't I move? Meanwhile, the old man from the Celestial Master Sect suddenly gazed at Qing, and his voice trembled. Who are you? Glanced at the old man, and then she flicked her sleeve. A ray of light slashed down on the old man, and then he was instantly obliterated on the spot. The demon emperor's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene, and he retreated hastily in terror. As for the beautiful woman from the Celestial Master Sect, her face was extremely pale. She seemed to have thought of something, and she opened her palm. A black talisman transformed into a black arrow that shot into the sky and shot into the depths of the starry sky. A single arrow pierced through the clouds, and an army came to meet them. Yi Xian glanced at the beautiful woman, and then he shook his head. I hate it when I call for help when I can't win. The Daoist hesitated for a moment, and then he said, Forget it. I won't say another word. It felt like it had to show some respect to Yi Xian for the sake of destiny. The beautiful woman glared at Qing, and besides deep fear in her eyes, there was also anger. Who are you? How dare you kill my Celestial Master Sect? Qing raised her head and looked into the depths of the starry sky. In the depths of the starry sky, there was still the mark left behind by the sleeve dart from the beautiful middle-aged woman. Qing slowly closed her eyes. In the next moment, she opened her palm, and the Wok sword suddenly flew out. Somewhere in the starry sky, a sword suddenly appeared in the sky above a huge city. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly rang out from within the city. How dare you? Who gave you the guts to offend my Celestial Master Sect? The walking sword suddenly plunged straight down. Boom. The moment the sword entered the city, the entire city was instantly reduced to nothingness. The Celestial Master Sect no longer existed in this world. Looked at the beautiful woman beside her, and her expression was calm. You don't have to wait. No one is coming. The beautiful woman said fiercely, No one is coming? Who do you think you are? You. Just at this moment, she seemed to notice something. She whipped her head around, and in the next moment, she felt as though she had been struck by a heavy blow. She seemed to have lost her soul. How is this possible? The white-robed woman had also noticed it. The Celestial Master Sect was gone. Both women looked at the plainly dressed woman. Just now, it was this plainly dressed woman who had unleashed the sword. One sword to destroy the Celestial Master Sect? The two women were completely flabbergasted. Not just the two women, but even the eternal demon emperor man was flabbergasted. The mighty Celestial Master Sect was gone just like that? Just who was this woman before them? At this time, Qing walked to Yi Xian's side. She grabbed Yi Xian's hand, saying, Brother, pretend for a while. I'm killing them. Hearing this, Yi Xian's face darkened. What did she mean by pretend for a while? Did he like to pretend? No one knew his brother better than his sister. Yi Xian laughed heartily, and then turned to the white-robed woman. He sighed. Miss, think about it. I have so many mystical treasures. How can I be ordinary? Even if I'm a villain, I should at least have some intelligence. The white-robed woman looked at Yi Xian. Who the hell are you? Yi Xian smiled. Yi Xian, have you heard of me? The white-robed woman glared at Yi Xian. No. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, "Then bye-bye." Saying so, he flicked his sleeves. Boom. The white-robed woman was obliterated. The white-robed woman. Yi Xian turned to the beautiful woman from the Celestial Master sect. She hurriedly said, "Sir, I've heard of you." Yi Xian blinked. "You've heard of me?" The beautiful woman nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian nodded. "Then leave." Hearing this, the beautiful woman was stunned. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Just go." The beautiful woman hesitated for a moment and said, "Really?" Yi Xian laughed heartily. "Of course." The beautiful woman bowed deeply. "Many thanks." With that, she turned and disappeared into the horizon. Far away in the depths of space, the beautiful woman saw that Yi Xian did not make a move. She heaved a sigh of relief. She sat paralyzed in space, her mind blank. Revenge? She did not have the slightest intention of doing so. He had destroyed the Celestial Master sect with a single stroke of his sword. Was he someone she could afford to offend? Yi Xian. The beautiful woman closed her eyes slowly, reciting the name in her heart. In space, the Eternal Demon Emperor looked at Yi Xian. "Sir, why didn't you kill her?" Yi Xian smiled. "Don't pretend to be Dao all at once. Save it for next time." The Eternal Demon Emperor. Yi Xian did not say anything else. He turned around and left with Qingya. As if remembering something, the Eternal Demon Emperor suddenly bowed deeply. "May I ask how I should address you, senior?" In the distance, Yi Xian did not even turn his head. Yi Xian, the Dean of Guanxian College. The Eternal Demon Emperor was silent, speechless. "I'm not asking you, why did you answer?" 7017K. Chapter 2419. After watching Yi Xian and Qing leave, the Eternal Demon Emperor sighed. He had to admit that the power of the plain-dressed woman had refreshed his understanding of the world. To think there was such a terrifying expert in this world. One sword to annihilate the entire Celestial Master sect. The entire Celestial Master sect was full of experts. Besides that, there were countless great arrays. However, such a super sect with such a deep foundation had actually been slain by someone with a single slash. It was like a dream. If it had not happened right before his eyes, he would not have believed it. Sigh. The Eternal Demon Emperor sighed, his heart in turmoil. As if recalling something, the Eternal Demon Emperor's expression froze. Yi Xian, the Dean of Guanxian College. The Eternal Demon Emperor suddenly said, "Ah Yao." As he spoke, a demonic beast appeared behind the Eternal Demon Emperor. The Eternal Demon Emperor opened his palm and waved lightly. Yi Xian's image appeared before Ah Yao. "Send my orders to the entire demon realm. Anyone who sees this person will treat him as if he sees me. If anyone dares to disrespect him, I will exterminate his entire family." Ah Yao was stunned. Clan leader. The Eternal Demon Emperor closed his eyes slowly. Not only that, all demons of the demon realm must treat the students of Guanxian College with respect. Ah Yao bowed deeply. "Understood." The Eternal Demon Emperor said softly, "Yi Xian, Guanxian College, is not to be trifled with." Somewhere in the starry skies, Yi Xian and Qing were walking side by side. The starry skies were vast, and the scenery was picturesque. After some time, the brother and sister came to a silent starry sky. There was no sign of life around them. It was dead silent. Yi Xian looked not far away. A few hundred zhang away, there was a thick stone tablet. On it was a line of words, "Sky Burial Grounds, death to all who enter." They had arrived at the Sky Burial Grounds. Yi Xian held Qing'er's hand as they walked to the stone tablet. When he saw the words, "Death to all who enter," he was unperturbed. Yi Xian held Qing'er's hand and walked around the stele. However, at this moment, the stele suddenly started to shake. Yi Xian turned around to look at the stone stele. Meanwhile, a figure suddenly floated out from within the stone stele like a ghost. Seeing this phantom, Yi Xian was stunned. The illusory figure said hoarsely, "A mere supreme deity dares to trespass this place. You have a death wish." As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his sleeve and a terrifying aura suddenly swept towards Yixian. Right at this moment, a ray of light suddenly flashed. Before the figure could react, a sword pierced through his forehead. In the next moment, a powerful force nailed him to the stone tablet. The phantom was stunned for a moment, then looked at Qing'er and said in a trembling voice, "You? Who are you?" Qing'er clutched Yixian's hand tightly. "Damn it. Sister?" The phantom looked at Yixian. Yixian smiled faintly. "Even a sister is so strong. As her brother. Hee, think about it yourself." After saying that, he turned around and left with Qing'er. Behind them, the phantom's expression froze. Soon, Yixian brought Qing'er to a mountain range. A mountain range in the starry sky. The entire mountain range was like a giant dragon coiling in the starry sky. It was a spectacular sight. Yixian looked into the depths of the mountain range with a solemn expression. "Qing'er, is there any danger?" Qing'er turned to look at Yixian. Yixian smiled and said, "I know." The corner of Qing'er's mouth curled up. Yixian pulled Qing'er towards the mountain range. Sky burial land. He wanted to see what kind of place it was. Holding Qing'er's hand, he thought, "I own the world." When they reached the foot of the mountain, Yixian found dozens of skeletons there. Yixian looked away after throwing it a glance. Then he kept moving forward. Suddenly, one of the skeletons trembled. In the next moment, a soul floated out of it. Yixian turned to look at the soul. The soul gradually solidified. Soon, a middle-aged man appeared in front of Yixian and Qing'er. The middle-aged man sized up Yixian and smiled. "Little brother, how should I address you?" Yixian smiled. "Yixian." The middle-aged man glanced at the peak. "You want to go up the mountain?" Yixian nodded. "I want to take a look." The middle-aged man smiled faintly. "It's dangerous." As he spoke, he revealed a kind smile. "Little brother, if you want to seek fortuitous encounters, you don't have to take risks. I have a fortuitous encounter here." Yixian was curious. "Fortuitous encounter?" The middle-aged man nodded. Yixian asked, "What fortuitous encounter?" The middle-aged man smiled. "Inheritance. My inheritance." Yixian glanced at the middle-aged man. He didn't say anything. The middle-aged man continued. "I'm at half-step virtual self-realm." Half-step virtual self-realm. Yixian was silent. Since he followed Qing'er, he saw everyone as ants. Not to mention half-step virtual self-realm, even a true self-realm expert was an ant before him. Now, he finally understood Xiaota. Why was Xiaota so arrogant? It was because he followed Qing'er for so long. The middle-aged man asked again. "Little brother, do you want the inheritance?" Yixian nodded. The middle-aged man smiled. "That's great. Later, when I enter your sea of consciousness, don't resist. I'll give you the inheritance." Yixian glanced at the middle-aged man. He smiled. "All right." The middle-aged man turned into a white light and entered between Yixian's eyebrows. Soon, a shadow appeared in Yixian's sea of consciousness. At this moment, the shadow suddenly laughed crazily. "Huh? What a great seedling. Wow, and so many time veins and god items. The heavens have treated me well." Yixian smiled. "You aren't thinking of possessing me, are you?" The phantom laughed heartily. "You only realized it now?" As he spoke, he was about to possess Yixian. At this moment, a sword light suddenly appeared in Yixian's sea of consciousness. Before the shadow could react, he was brought out of Yixian's sea of consciousness by the sword light. Then, he was nailed to a rock far away. The shadow was stunned. Yixian glanced at the figure that had a blank expression on its face, and then said, "Possession? What are you thinking about?" The shadow suddenly looked at Qing'er. "It's you," Qing'er shook his head. He looked disgusted. The shadow, Yixian glanced at the shadow and shook his head. He had a look of disdain. After saying this, he pulled Qing'er and walked up the mountain. The shadow. When they reached halfway up the mountain, Yixian saw a few more skeletons. Among these skeletons, there were virtual self-realm experts. Yi Xian glanced at them and withdrew his gaze. He continued forward with Qing'e. When they reached the top of the mountain, he saw a corpse. It was a middle-aged man. He wore black battle armor and held a spear. His entire body was shrouded in black flowing light. Seeing this corpse, Yi Xian was surprised. This corpse had been dead for a long time. However, his physical body was preserved so well. His strength must be extraordinary. Yi Xian walked to the corpse and said softly, "Senior, do you have any inheritance for your descendants?" No response. Yi Xian thought for a moment. He was about to speak when the corpse suddenly opened his eyes. When he saw Yi Xian, he was stunned. Then, his expression became strange. Yi Xian smiled. "Senior, hello." The man was silent for a moment. He said, "You're so weak. How did you get here?" Yi Xian thought for a moment. He said, "I was lucky." The man's expression froze. Yi Xian wanted to say something. However, Qing'e suddenly grabbed Yi Xian's hand and said softly, "Brother." Yi Xian turned to look at Qing'e. Qing'e said softly, "Don't take his inheritance. He's very weak." The man suddenly coughed violently. He looked at Qing'e with slight dissatisfaction. "I'm at half-step true self realm. How dare you say I'm weak? You." Qing'e shook her head. "You're not weak." The man was stunned. Meanwhile, Qing'e said, "You're very weak, okay?" Yi Xian was speechless. The man was furious. He suddenly stood up, and a terrifying aura crushed towards Qing'e. However, it vanished without a trace as soon as it got close to Qing'e. Seeing this, the man was completely dumbfounded. "You've got some skills." Qing'e was silent. Meanwhile, the man suddenly said, "I'm going to get serious." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and the spear in his hand suddenly trembled violently. In the next moment, a strand of terrifying spear intent erupted like a volcano as it swept towards Qing. In an instant, the space in the surroundings started trembling. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression immediately became solemn. He had to admit that the man in front of him was indeed very strong. Although the other party might only have a wisp of his soul left, Yi Xian might not be able to defeat him. Half-step true self realm. Yi Xian took a deep breath. It seems that I have to increase my realm. Especially now that Qing'e is here. When the man's spear will reach Qing'e, it disappeared without a trace just like before. At this moment, the man was completely stunned. He looked at Qing'e in disbelief. Qing'e's expression was calm. She snapped her fingers. Boom. Before the man could react, a terrifying force pressed down on him. Thump. The man's legs turned to jelly, and he knelt in front of Yi Xian. The man was enraged. He wanted to resist, but the force pressed down on him. He could not move at all. At this moment, the man broke out in cold sweat. He had to face reality. This woman's strength far surpassed his. The man looked at Qing'e. Just as he was about to say something, Qing'e suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Brother, he's very weak. We don't want his inheritance. Let's go." The man's expression froze. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then looked at the man. "Senior, my sister said that you're very weak. She can't accept your inheritance. I'm sorry. Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, he pulled Qing'e along and walked towards the distance. The man was dumbfounded. After a while, he gulped. "I've been asleep for hundreds of thousands of years, and you woke me up. So, you and your sister are purposely trying to anger me?" He had a mental breakdown. 7017K. Chapter 2420. Yi Xian led Qing'e into the distance. Along the way, he did not see any more corpses. Not long after, the brother and sister arrived before a stone door. The stone door was open, and behind it was a tomb without a tombstone. On the two pillars on either side of the stone door were two warriors in golden armor. One was holding a sword while the other was holding a saber. They were vivid and lifelike, just like real people. Their eyes, in particular, were dignified without being angry. Qing'e glanced at the tomb, then retracted her gaze. Yi Xian led Qing'e towards the tomb. When they approached the stone door, it suddenly trembled. In the next moment, the two pillars on either side of the stone door suddenly exploded with a terrifying aura. Then, the warriors on the pillars suddenly walked out. One of them suddenly glared at Yi Xian and pointed his sword at Yi Xian. "Impudent! For you! How dare you trespass into the heavens' burial ground?" His voice was like a great bell, shaking the heavens and earth. Yi Xian was shocked. These two warriors were actually the legendary True Self Realm experts. True Self Realm. At this moment, the middle-aged man that Yi Xian and Qing had encountered rushed over. When he saw the two warriors in golden armor come to life, the middle-aged man's expression immediately changed and he hurriedly retreated to the side. When the golden-armored warrior saw that Yi Xian did not speak, he flew into a rage and slashed at Yi Xian with the long sword in his hand. Swish! A golden sword light fell straight down, as if it was going to slash the universe into pieces. It was extremely terrifying. In the face of this terrifying sword, Yi Xian's expression was calm, and his heart did not waver. Just when the sword was half an inch away from Yi Xian's head, suddenly, the sword disappeared between the warrior's eyebrows without any warning. Boom! The warrior in golden armor immediately froze on the spot as if his body had been frozen. Seeing this, the warrior with the saber suddenly turned to look at Qing. His eyes filled with disbelief. The golden-armored warrior was not the only one. The middle-aged man who was rushing over from afar was also filled with disbelief. Holy shit! Holy shit! Back then, this golden-armored warrior had almost killed him with a single slash of his sword. Although he had survived, he had cultivated for more than 100,000 years. Therefore, he knew very well how terrifying the golden-armored warrior was. However, at this moment, this terrifying golden-armored warrior was actually frozen in place by this woman's sword. This golden-armored warrior was a true self-realm expert. What the hell? The middle-aged man's mind went blank. The golden-armored man, who had been stopped by Qing'er's sword, looked at Qing'er in disbelief. Qing'er's expression was calm. She turned to Yi Xian and asked, "Do we kill them?" "Kill." Yi Xian thought for a moment, then looked at the sword-wielding golden-armored man. "Who is buried in that tomb?" The golden-armored man was silent. Her frowned and pressed her palm down. Boom! The golden-armored man's soul dissipated at a terrifying speed. The golden-armored man was horrified. He hurriedly said, "The Tian clan's patriarch is in this tomb." Tian clan. Yi Xian frowned. In the era of the myriad clans, there were 3 superclans. Besides the human clan, there was the Tian clan and the Holy clan. He had never expected that this place was the Tian clans. At this moment, the sword-wielding golden-armored man said in a trembling voice, "Little brother, you must not open this tomb." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" The sword-wielding golden-armored man said in a low voice, "Besides the Tian clan's patriarch, there is also a variant king suppressed in this tomb." Yi Xian glanced at the tomb and said, "A variant king?" The sword-wielding golden-armored man nodded. "An undying and indestructible variant king. Our patriarch sacrificed himself to suppress it in this tomb. If we open it, it will reappear in the world. Once it does, it will be a disaster." Yi Xian turned to look at Qing. Qing'er's expression was calm. "It's about to come out." The sword-wielding golden-armored man was stunned. In the next moment, the tomb suddenly started to tremble violently. The expressions of the sword-wielding golden-armored man and the blade-wielding golden-armored man instantly changed. The blade-wielding man suddenly turned around and slashed down at the tomb. A terrifying saber chi slashed down at the tomb. However, the saber chi shattered as soon as it arrived before the tomb. Boom! The tomb suddenly shattered, and then a strand of green smoke slowly floated out. It was a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man wore a white robe and a golden crown. His entire body was like a strand of green smoke, extremely illusory. The blade-wielding man hurriedly bowed deeply when he saw the middle-aged man. "Patriarch." The Tian clan's patriarch. The Tian clan's patriarch glanced at the coffin that was covered in all sorts of strange runes, and he had a complicated expression on his face. In the end, I couldn't suppress it any longer. The sword-wielding man and blade-wielding man's faces instantly turned pale when they heard this. Ha! At this moment, a loud laughter suddenly resounded from within the coffin. Millions of years! Millions of years! This king has finally come out. Ha! As soon as the voice resounded, the coffin suddenly exploded. In the next moment, a man in a black robe slowly floated out. There was a horn on the man's head, his eyes were crimson red, and he emanated an extremely terrifying aura. Variant King. The Tian clan's patriarch shook his head slightly when he saw the Variant King appear. He had sacrificed himself to suppress the Variant King for millions of years. He had wanted to exhaust the Variant King to death, but he hadn't expected that not only would the Tian clan not be exhausted to death, he would be exhausted instead. In the end, he still failed. And now, who in this world could stop a Variant King? At this moment, the Variant King suddenly looked at the Tian clan's patriarch and laughed. Tian Mu, I'm immortal. My body is immortal, my soul is immortal, and my consciousness is immortal. You want to exhaust me to death? You're simply dreaming. Even if I give you a few million years, you won't be able to exhaust me to death. In this world, no one can kill me. Tian Mu fell silent. Right at this moment, he seemed to have sensed something, and he swiftly turned around to look at the golden armored man who was nailed to the ground by the sword. He was instantly stunned when he saw this scene, and then he swiftly turned around to look at Qing. Who are you? Qing didn't reply. After a moment of silence, Tian Mu opened his palm and a golden seal floated in front of Qing. Young lady, are you willing to be the Tian clan's patriarch? If you are willing, I will give you all the treasures of the Tian clan. In reality, he couldn't feel how strong Qing was. Right now, he could only try to save a dead horse. A true self-realm expert that could easily suppress a true self-realm expert. It was worth the gamble. Her glanced at the golden seal, her face expressionless. At this moment, Yixian suddenly said, My sister isn't willing. How about I do it? Everyone. When he heard Yixian, Tian Mu turned to look at Yixian. He sized up Yixian and hesitated. Yixian said seriously, If I do it, it will be the same as if my sister did it. Tian Mu looked at Qing. When he saw that Qing had no intention of doing it, he nodded slightly and opened his palm. The golden seal floated in front of Yixian. Yixian hurriedly put it away. At this moment, the strange king suddenly laughed. Tian clan's patriarch? How laughable! After today, will the Tian clan still exist? As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at Yixian and punched at Yixian. This punch caused the sky to change color. At the instant the King punched out, a sword suddenly pierced through his fist and entered his body along his arm. Bang! Under everyone's gaze, the strange king was pinned to a nearby stone pillar. In an instant, the surroundings fell silent. Tian Mu and the others turned to look at Qing with eyes filled with disbelief. The strange king was completely dumbfounded. After being pinned to the ground, the strange king gazed at Qing. Who are you? Qing glanced at the strange king and said, Big brother, do we kill him? Yixian fell silent. The strange king suddenly spoke fiercely, Kill? I'm immortal. Who can kill me? Qing suddenly flicked his sleeve, and the walking sword trembled violently. Bang! The strange king was obliterated in front of everyone. After the king was wiped out, Tian Mu's eyes were filled with disbelief. This is impossible. Qing gazed at Tian Mu. Why is it impossible? Tian Mu stared at Qing. He's immortal. All of us joined forces to attack him all those years ago, but none of our techniques were able to kill him. You. Qing fell silent for a moment, then said, Maybe you're too weak. Everyone. Meanwhile, Tian Mu suddenly said, Are you related to the Daoist? Obviously, he had noticed the Daoist on Yixian's waist. Qing shook her head. I'm not related. Tian Mu frowned. Aren't you on the Daoist's side? Qing's brows knit together slightly. At this moment, the Daoist's voice suddenly resounded. What do you mean by on my side? Patriarch Tian Mu, The person in front of you is a big boss of destiny. Big boss of destiny? Tianmu was slightly surprised. I've never heard of her. The Daoist said angrily, you don't need to know. You just need to know that she's invincible. Tianmu. The Daoist continued, hurry up and tell the rest of your heavenly clan to listen to your orders. This shameless. Oh no, it's young Master Yi. Tell your heavenly clan to listen to young Master Yi. Then you can go in peace. Young Master Yi. Tianmu glanced at Yi Xian, and after a moment of silence, he nodded. From now on, young Master Yi is our patriarch. Everyone in our heavenly clan must listen to young Master Ye's orders. Anyone who disobeys will be executed by our heavenly clan. After saying that, his body gradually became illusory. Yi Xian suddenly looked at the two golden armored men. Do they also listen to my orders? The two golden armored men immediately bowed respectfully. Greetings, Patriarch. How could they dare to disobey? Didn't they see that the variant king was killed in a second? At this moment, Yi Xian smiled. Patriarch Tianmu, don't worry. Think about it, even your sister is so strong. As her brother. Think about it yourself. Tianmu was stunned at first, then he smiled and left with a peace of mind. 7017K. Chapter 24-21. The Celestial Race. Yi Xian glanced at the golden seal. There were over 50 billion universe veins within it. Besides that, there were another 200 million universe veins. Moreover, there were all sorts of divine treasures. They were even richer than the human race. Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh as he gazed at the golden seal. He really had all the manpower and money he needed right now. He was completely capable of expanding the academy by countless times. No, he wanted to establish academies in countless universes and establish an extraordinary power that wasn't inferior to the Yang clan or the Celestial Treasure Pavilion. As if he'd thought of something, Yi Xian gazed at the two golden armored warriors before him. Gather all the surviving experts of the celestial race. The golden armored man hesitated for a moment and said, just the two of us. Yi Xian was stunned. Just the two of you? The man nodded with a dim expression. Yes. Yi Xian looked around and found it hard to believe. Only the two of you are from the Sky Clan? The man nodded with a bitter expression. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. How could there be so few? The man shook his head and sighed. My celestial race was at the forefront of the battle all those years ago, so we suffered the greatest losses. Moreover, our celestial race suffered the vengeance of the enemy later on. As he spoke, he shook his head slightly, and his eyes were filled with pain. He wasn't willing to speak any further. The celestial race could be said to have been annihilated. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, from this moment onward, both of you will follow me. The two of them hurriedly bowed respectfully. Yi Xian smiled. Head to the Universe of Gods Guan Xian Academy. Someone will make arrangements for you there. The two of them bowed once more before standing up and leaving. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man who was hiding in the shadows suddenly walked out and bowed slightly to Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, can I follow you as well? He finally understood. This person before him was a big shot, so he had to hold onto such a thick thigh. Yi Xian sized up the man in the middle and said with a smile, sure. You can head to the Guan Xian Academy as well. The middle-aged man hurriedly bowed deeply before turning around and leaving. Only Yi Xian and Qing'e were left in the field. Qing'e suddenly whispered, Brother, I'm leaving. Yi Xian looked at Qing'e in surprise. Qing'e nodded. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Qing'e, where are you going? Qing'e smiled, go do something. I'll come find you after I'm done. Yi Xian grabbed Qing'e's hand and asked softly, how long? Qing'e smiled, it won't take too long. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian nodded. All right. Qing'e gently caressed Yi Xian's cheek. Brother, take care. After saying that, her body suddenly became illusory. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, Qing'e, when will you appear again? Qing'e smiled, when you're wronged. After saying that, she disappeared completely. When I'm wronged? Yi Xian froze on the spot. After a long time, Yi Xian collected his thoughts and shook his head with a smile. To the left. At this moment he suddenly felt empty in his heart. At this time, Xiaota suddenly said, "Young lord, what do you plan to do next?" After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, "Create a black clan. I want it to become the #1 clan in the universe." Black clan, Xiaota said in a low voice. Stronger than the Yang clan? Yi Xian laughed out loud. Of course. Xiaota sighed. He knew that Yi Xian wouldn't return to the Yang clan. Most of the time, Yi Xian's temper was the same as his master's, stubborn like a bull. At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared in the distant sky. Yi Xian looked up at the sky, and there, the space there trembled slightly. Yi Xian laughed. "Who are you? How dare you in front of me?" The Daoist suddenly said, "Your sister is gone." Yi Xian was stunned at first, but in the next moment he turned and ran, disappearing in the end of the starry sky in the blink of an eye. Not long after Yi Xian disappeared, a shadow suddenly appeared in the field. The shadow gradually solidified. It was a middle-aged man, and there was also a horn on his head. The figure glanced at the scene and his expression gradually became serious. "Who is it, to be able to kill a mutant king of my clan?" After a moment, the shadow's body trembled slightly and then disappeared. Yi Xian returned to the middle world. As soon as he returned, a woman appeared in front of him. It was Qing Qiu. Qing Qiu smiled slightly. "Brother." Yi Xian smiled, and then took Qing Qiu's hand. "Let's go." After saying that, he pulled Qing Qiu to a hall. Qing Qiu glanced at Yi Xian and smiled sweetly. Inside the hall, Yi Xian called for emissary Zhang. Now, the main person in charge of the whole middle world was actually not Qing Qiu, but emissary Zhang, because Qing Qiu had to be responsible for too many worlds. Now, under emissary Zhang's management, the middle world was also in good order. Yi Xian looked at emissary Zhang and said with a smile, "Do you know that I have already left the Yang clan?" Emissary Zhang bowed respectfully. "Yes." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Then, are you still willing to follow me?" Emissary Zhang smiled slightly. "Of course, Dean." "Not young master." Yi Xian laughed. "Old Zhang, your priority now is to improve your strength." Emissary Zhang nodded. "Understood." He knew that only when he was strong enough could he be of help to Yi Xian. Yi Xian opened his palm, and a storage ring slowly floated to Emissary Zhang. Emissary Zhang took a look, and his pupils suddenly shrank, and then he slowly knelt down. Yi Xian said with a smile, "You deserve it." Emissary Zhang bowed deeply. "Thank you, Dean." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Get up." Emissary Zhang stood up, and his heart was filled with excitement. The things in the storage ring were enough to change his fate again. Yi Xian turned to look at Qing Qiu. "Girl, what happened to the people of Imperial Yin tribe after they went to Guanxian Academy?" Qing Qiu thought for a moment and said, "Big brother, I've opened a separate faction within the academy. It's not very realistic for a clan like theirs to directly integrate into the academy. So, I've given them a separate faction, and I've named it after their clan, the Emperor Yin Courtyard." Yi Xian said solemnly, "In the future?" Qing Qiu nodded. "I know, if there are more factions, the academy will be difficult to manage in the future, but there is no other way. We can only do this for now. Of course, we must choose the successor of the academy carefully in the future." Yi Xian nodded. With him and Qing Qiu now, the academy will not fall into chaos, but in the future, if the ruler of the academy is not strong enough, then Guanxian Academy will definitely fall into internal strife, and once that happens, it may be a disaster for countless universes. Qing Qiu continued, "There is another problem. We need money now." "Money?" Emissary Zhang quickly said, "Dean, the middle world also needs money. The development of Guanxian Academy was simply too fast. And to do so fast, it will burn money." "Money?" Hearing their words, Yi Xian laughed. "Isn't it just money? Small matter, small matter." In his opinion, in terms of money, Qin Guan might not even have as much as him. Qin Guan? After Yi Xian finished speaking, he opened his palm, and 2 storage rings slowly floated to Qing Qiu and Emissary Zhang. Emissary Zhang looked at the storage rings, and there are 10 billion universe veins in them. Emissary Zhang was shocked. Dean, Yi Xian smiled. It should be able to solve the urgent problem. Emissary Zhang nodded. It's completely enough. Xianxia shook her head. Brother, it's not enough. Yi Xian smiled. How much do you need? Xianxia thought for a moment, and then said, at least 50 billion, 50 billion. Yi Xian was stunned. Xianxia smiled. We have over 1,200 branches in Guanxian Academy now. Hearing this, Yi Xian was shocked. 1,200 branches? Xianxia nodded. Yes. If it wasn't for the lack of manpower, I would have opened more branches. Now, what we lack the most is manpower. Manpower. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then said, not only do we need to recruit more talents, but we also need to nurture them ourselves. Xianxia smiled. Of course. Yi Xian was silent for a moment, and then said, Girl, I need you to do something for me. Xianxia nodded. Brother, do you want to form a military force? Yi Xian laughed. Girl, are you a roundworm in my stomach? Xianxia smiled and then said, Actually, even if you didn't mention it, I would have brought it up. Although our academy has a martial arts courtyard, we lack a troop that belongs to us. Yi Xian nodded. You handle this matter. You can challenge all the talents in the academy. I'll solve the problem of money. Xianxia blinked. Brother, besides money, I need something else. Yi Xian smiled. What is it? Xianxia said seriously, Xiaota. Xiaota. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then smiled. All right. With Xiaota to nurture the strong, it would be half the effort for twice the result. If it was someone else, he naturally wouldn't feel at ease to hand over Xiaota, but Xianxia wasn't someone else. Yi Xian gave Xianxia Xiaota, and at the same time, he gave Xianxia 100 billion universe veins and 100 million universe veins. Not only that, he gave Xianxia all the treasures he got from the various clans. He had money, time, and equipment. Xianxia said again, Brother, besides Xiaota, I also want your Daoist. Yi Xian said with a smile, Why? Xianxia smiled, I have my own use for it. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then opened his palm, and a Daoist appeared in front of Xianxia. Xianxia looked at the tiny pagoda and brush before him, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Brother, don't worry. It won't be long before I'll give you a great pleasant surprise. Yi Xian smiled, I'm looking forward to it. Xianxia nodded, and then turned to leave. At this time, an old man walked into the hall, and the old man bowed slightly. Dean, the Yang clan is here. Yang clan? Yi Xian frowned. I won't see them. After saying that, he stood up and left. At this time, laughter came from outside the hall. I won't see them either? Hearing this voice, Yi Xian was stunned at first, and then he smiled bitterly and stopped. Please. Chapter 24-22. Invite him in. As soon as Yi Xian finished speaking, a woman walked slowly into the hall. It was Ding Xiaoyao. Yi Xian smiled bitterly when he saw Ding Xiaoyao. Aunt Ding. Even though he didn't have a good impression of the Yang clan, he still had a good impression of Ding Xiaoyao because she'd helped him quite a bit in the past. The Yang clan was the Yang clan, Aunt Ding was Aunt Ding, and he, Yi Xian, distinguished kindness and enmity clearly. Ding Xiaoyao grinned when she saw Yi Xian. Long time no see, little fellow. Yi Xian smiled. Hello, Aunt Ding. Ding Xiaoyao smiled. Can we speak in private? Hearing this, Yi Xian glanced at Messenger Zhang beside him. The latter bowed deeply and then quietly retreated. Only Ding Xiaoyao and Yi Xian remained in the hall. Ding Xiaoyao smiled. You know why I came here? Yi Xian nodded. I guessed a little. Ding Xiaoyao thought for a moment and said, I intended to persuade you, but I think it's unnecessary now. Yi Xian was puzzled. Why? Ding Xiaoyao smiled. Firstly, you absolutely won't go back. Secondly, there's no need for you to go back. Yi Xian fell silent. Ding Xiaoyao continued. Qingshi made a mistake. She has no ill intent towards you, but the way she treats you is wrong. Yi Xian's expression was calm. I don't want to interfere in the business of others. Ding Xiaoyao sighed softly. Just as she'd said, she had no ill intent towards Yi Xian, but the way she treated Yi Xian was wrong. Yi Xian hadn't grown up in the Yang clan, and coupled with the fact that the green-clothed sword master had left him to his own devices, Yi Xian had no sense of belonging to the Yang clan. Moreover, someone from the Yang clan had said that Yi Xian was an illegitimate child at a time like this. With Yi Xian's character, how could he tolerate it? An illegitimate child. It wasn't just an insult to Yi Xian, it was an insult to the entire Yang clan. That was probably the real reason why Yi Xian was angry and left the Yang clan. Ding Xiaoyao sighed once more. Little fellow, I'm in charge of everything in the Yang clan now. Yi Xian grinned. Ding Xiaoyao, congratulations. If you're here to persuade me to return, then there's no need. Ding Xiaoyao smiled and said, I'm not here to persuade you to return to the Yang clan. Yi Xian was a little surprised. So, why did Aunt Ding come here? Yi Ding, Ding Xiaoyao Yi Xian Yi Xian. As Yi Xian Yi as he heard. Yi Xian was even more surprised. For the Ding Xiaoyao smiled and said, these are all talents that I've nurtured myself. Some are talented in management, some are knowledgeable, and some are proficient in deduction and calculation. In short, each of them is a top figure in their own field. Then she looked at Yi Xian. I know you need a lot of talents to establish an academy, right? Yi Xian was silent. Ding Xiaoyao Yi, don't think too much about it. I've trained them myself. Although they're from the Yang clan, I've trained them myself. So, you don't need to think too much about it. Just treat them as my people. Yi Xian was speechless. Ding Xiaoyao Yi Xian suddenly opened her palm and a map floated in front of Yi Xian. This is the Yang clan's universe map. There are 360,000 universes in total. Before I came, I gave the order for these 360,000 universes to establish academies. Now that the academies have been established, you can send people to take over at any time. You don't need to worry about talents. Before I came, I also issued an imperial examination to select talents. It won't be long before there will be a steady stream of talents joining your academy. As for funding, you don't need to worry about it. The Yang clan still has some savings over the years. Yi Xian bitterly smiled. Aunt Ding Yu, Ding Xiaoyao Yi continued. Do you know the most important thing in establishing an academy? Money and talents? Yi Xian asked in a solemn voice. Ding Xiaoyao Yi shook her head. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is to win the hearts of the people. The path you're taking is different from the Yang clan. You want to establish a new order, and to establish a new order, you need to win the hearts of the people. Not only do you need to win the hearts of the people, but you also need to obtain the recognition of all living beings in the world. As she spoke, she lightly smiled. Before I came, I've already contacted Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai has agreed to join your Guanxian Academy and take up the position of the Academy Dean. As she spoke, she opened her palm and a piece of paper floated in front of Yi Xian. On the paper, there was a small claw mark. Yi Xian looked at the paper. This is? Ding Xiaoyao Yi smiled. I've written an engagement letter, and Xiao Bai has already signed it. With this engagement letter, you can obtain the recognition of all living beings in the current universe and the boundless universe, as well as the Tendo. Not only that, but you can also obtain their help. Yi Xian fell into silence, and his right hand couldn't help trembling. Ding Xiaoyao Yi Xian smiled. Do you know how many universes there are in the current universe? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. Ding Xiaoyao Yi Xian lightly smiled. There are at least trillions of universes in the current universe. In these trillions of universes, there are as many forces as the hairs on a cow, and they're even more complicated. If you want your academy to spread throughout the universe, aside from the help of all living beings, you also need the help of a clan. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a piece of paper floated in front of Yi Xian. On that piece of paper, there was a bolt of divine lightning. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. This is? Ding Xiaoyao Yi smiled. The patriarch of the Tendo clan signed an agreement with me, and the Tendo clan has already agreed to help us in the countless universes. The people of the world revere the Tendo, and if the Tendo clan is willing to enter the Guanxian Academy. As she spoke, the corner of her lips rose, and she didn't continue speaking. Yi Xian was silent. Ding Xiaoyao. Yi Xian continued, "What is the most important thing for the establishment of the academy? It's the law. A set of laws that can govern the entire universe. Before I came here, I've already gathered countless knowledgeable people and asked them to formulate a perfect set of laws." As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a storage ring slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. There were tens of millions of thick ancient books in the storage ring. Yi Xian was a little shocked. "These are?" Ding Xiaoyao. Yi Xian said with a smile. "Laws?" Yi Xian was shocked. "So many?" Ding Xiaoyao. Yi Xian shook her head. "You should know that there are so many universes, and the customs of each place are different. Therefore, when we formulate laws, we also have to consider the customs of each place, especially some special races. Our human morals aren't suitable for them, so we have to formulate exclusive laws for them." Yi Xian was silent. Ding Xiaoyao continued. "After the law appears, we need the strength to uphold it. I know that your academy has just been established, so you definitely don't have enough manpower. So, I helped you establish an enforcement team. I personally picked this team of enforcers, and there's no problem with their character. There are a total of 36 of them, and all of them are at the peak of the virtual self realm. They can travel to different universes freely. Of course, 36 people is definitely a small number, so I let them pick some people from the clan. After some calculations, there are about 109 of them, and they are all peak experts." Yi Xian glanced at Ding Xiaoyao and didn't say anything. Ding Xiaoyao smiled faintly and said, "Don't look at me, I won't ask you to return to the Yang clan. As I said, you don't need to return to the Yang clan. It's a good thing for a young man to establish a career outside. I support you." Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "Ding, I don't even know if I should reject you." Ding Xiaoyao suddenly asked, "What is your purpose in establishing the academy?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "To establish a brand new order." Ding Xiaoyao nodded. "Since you want to establish order and change the universe, then you should have a bigger heart and be more tolerant. Do you think I'm right?" Yi Xian nodded. Ding Xiaoyao smiled and said, "I know that your personality is like your father, and sometimes you're a little extreme. But now, you're the dean of the academy. There are many times when you can't deal with things according to your temper. Do you think Aunt Ding is right?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Ding Xiaoyao nodded slightly. "So, do you still want to reject me now?" Yi Xian. Ding Xiaoyao smiled and said, "I know that you don't blame the Yang clan, nor do you blame Qingshi. What you're upset about is that bastard child. You asked Qingshi if you're an illegitimate child. I know that you feel wronged, but I feel that you don't need to prove to anyone whether you're an illegitimate child or not. You are you, and you don't care about the position of the Yang clan's young master, do you?" Yi Xian nodded. Ding Xiaoyao smiled lightly, and then she opened her palm. A spatial ring slowly floated in front of Yi Xian. There are 200 billion universe veins in this spatial ring. In addition, there are all kinds of cultivation techniques and divine abilities. An academy needs to nurture its armed forces. These should be helpful to you. Saying that, she smiled faintly. "No matter what, we're a family. Do you think I'm right?" Yi Xian glanced at the spatial ring. He hesitated for a moment and then nodded. "Yes." Ding Xiaoyao smiled and said, "I won't disturb you anymore. Go do what you need to do." Saying that, she turned and left. When she reached the door, she suddenly stopped and then said, "I have a big gift for you later." "Wait." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Aunt Ding, you're too polite." Ding Xiaoyao smiled and said, "We're a family. What's the point of saying this?" Saying that, she turned and left the hall. Within the hall, Yi Xian fell silent. He gazed at the spatial ring in front of him and wondered, was I really being a little petty? After Ding Xiaoyao left the hall, she arrived high up in the clouds. A woman with a sword on her back was standing there. It was Situ Tingyun. Situ Tingyun looked down and said, "How is it?" Ding Xiaoyao smiled slightly. "That child is just slightly aggrieved. He doesn't really hate us." Situ Tingyun spoke in a low voice. "He's willing to return to the Yang clan?" Ding Xiaoyao shook her head. "I didn't ask him to return to the Yang clan." Situ Tingyun's beautiful brows knit together slightly. Why? Ding Xiaoyao spoke softly, because he'll absolutely not return to the Yang clan if that's the case. So, we have to change our method. For example, let the Yang clan slowly merge into his Guanxian Academy. Situ Tingyun hesitated for a moment and said, "Is there a difference?" Ding Xiaoyao smiled slightly. There is. He definitely won't return to the Yang clan on his own. But if I want the Yang clan to merge into his Guanxian Academy, then he won't be able to refuse. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she spoke. That little fellow is still a little too inexperienced. Situ Tingyun was speechless. Chapter 24-23. Within the hall, Yixian shook his head and smiled after Ding Xiaoyao left. He really couldn't refuse Ding Xiaoyao's help because it was too important to Guanxian Academy. Yixian didn't think too much about it. He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. The godly realm. After following Qing around the secret realm, he'd gained a lot, but he'd comprehended a lot as well. The gap in strength. There was still a huge gap between him and the big shots of the secret realm. Qing could kill them in an instant, but it didn't mean that Yi Xian could. For example, those so-called spirits weren't existences he could go against in a one-on-one battle. Improve his strength. Yi Xian started to comprehend the godly realm. While Yi Xian was cultivating, Guanxian Academy had developed at an indescribable speed after the Yang clan joined. Moreover, the mysterious Yang clan had gradually surfaced as well. In the past, the Yang clan had only existed in high-end universes. But now, the Yang clan had started to enter the sights of lower universes. Of course, the most important thing was Guanxian Academy. In the beginning, Guanxian Academy could only be considered to have a small reputation, but now it was like a plague that had swept through the entire universe. Within Xiaota, Qing Qiu stood on a stone platform on a certain training ground, and there were over 100 people standing not too far away from her. These 100 people had been personally selected by Qing Qiu from Guanxian Academy and the various universes. The person in the lead was Dao Ling, and beside him were Junxie, Shitian, and Tianqi. These four people were once Yi Xian's brothers, and Yi Xian had specially sought them out. Their natural talents were absolutely top-notch, and what they lacked was resources and a platform. Qing Qiu glanced at them. Your goal is the peak of the virtual self realm. If you want money, you have it. If you want time, you have it. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. But it wasn't long before she stopped and said, the first to attain the virtual self-realm will be rewarded with 2 billion universe veins. The last to attain it will leave this place. As soon as she finished speaking, she vanished into the distance. All of them exchanged glances, and then they started cultivating madly. On the other side, Qing Qiu looked at the crowd and smiled. In the near future, Guanxian Academy would have a large number of super powerhouses. A moment later, Qing Qiu left. Right after she left Xiaota, a woman appeared before her. That person was Ding Xiaoyao. Ding Xiaoyao looked at Qing Qiu and smiled. Hello, Miss Qing Qiu. Qing Qiu nodded. Yang clan? Ding Xiaoyao nodded. I'm Ding Xiaoyao, your brother's Aunt Ding. Qing Qiu smiled. What's the matter, Miss Ding? Ding Xiaoyao smiled. I want to talk to you about the future development of Guanxian Academy. Qing Qiu nodded. Sure. Ding Xiaoyao smiled and said, now that the Yang clan has joined Guanxian Academy, it can be said to be invincible in the current universe. But according to my investigations, the boundless universe is already getting restless. Qing Qiu looked calm and didn't speak. Ding Xiaoyao continued, I've investigated the 100 Clans era. In that era, there were countless clans and powerhouses, but in the end, that era was buried by the boundless universe. Moreover, if it wasn't for Master de Daoist's intervention, the current universe would have been gone. Qing Qiu looked at Ding Xiaoyao. What do you think, Miss Ding? Ding Xiaoyao smiled. Our current enemy is the boundless universe, right? Qing Qiu smiled and didn't speak. Ding Xiaoyao looked at Qing Qiu. Miss Qing Qiu doesn't care about the boundless universe? Qing Qiu shook his head. To be able to be dismissive of that place. Only the three of them? Ding Xiaoyao looked straight at Qing Qiu. Miss Qing Qiu can't reach the level of the three of them? Qing Qiu smiled. Not yet. Ding Xiaoyao frowned. Why? Qing Qiu said softly, the timing isn't right. Timing? Ding Xiaoyao's eyes flashed with doubt. Then when is the best timing? Qing Qiu smiled and didn't speak. Ding Xiaoyao glanced at Qing Qiu and didn't ask any more. Qing Qiu suddenly said, the boundless universe is more complicated than you think. Ding Xiaoyao said in a low voice, I know. Even the master of the Daoist can't control it. Qing Qiu shook his head. Miss, you're wrong again. Ding Xiaoyao looked at Qing Qiu. Qing Qiu said softly, the master of the Daoist is much stronger than you think. For now, no one dares to kill him, including Su Qiu Tianming. Ding Xiaoyao frowned. But Qing Qiu said, because he is the cause of everything. If he dies? Then she shook her head. Do you know what Su Qiu Tianming wants to do? Ding Xiaoyao shook her head. Qing Qiu smiled. She wants to make me jump out of this circle, but it can't be rushed. She has to wait. Ding Xiaoyao was silent for a moment and said, how strong is the master of the Daoist? Qing Qiu was silent for a moment and said, no one can kill him under the three swords. Then she paused and said, in the future I can. Ding Xiaoyao, Qing Qiu said again, Miss Ding, the forces in the boundless universe are quite complicated. Without the three swords, the forces in the current universe may not be able to defeat the enemy. So, tell your Yang clan to be careful. Then she turned and left. Ding Xiaoyao suddenly said, do you want to go to the boundless universe? In the distance, Qing Qiu shook her head. Someone has already gone. Then she disappeared into the distance. Ding Xiaoyao was silent. The boundless universe. In fact, she had also sent someone to go. Ding Xiaoyao turned to look at the distant starry sky with a trace of worry in her eyes. Since the green-robed man left, she had not been able to contact him. Not only her, but even Su Qingshi could not be contacted. Such a problem had never occurred before. Was the current universe really going to change? Ding Xiaoyao frowned slightly. Somewhere in the depths of the starry sky, a woman was shuttling through the starry sky. The woman wore a white robe and tied her hair in a ponytail. She held a long spear in her right hand. The woman's speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, she had shuttled through hundreds of thousands of starry sky. After an unknown period of time, the woman came to an unknown starry sky. In front of her, there was a huge illusory light gate. This light gate was nearly 1,000,000 feet long. Above this gate, there was a big word floating. Suppress. First of the 6 syllables. Suppress. Suppress everything in the world. The woman looked behind the light gate. Behind the light gate, there was only chaos. Nothing could be seen. The woman frowned slightly when she witnessed this scene. After a short moment, she walked towards the door of light. When she arrived before it, the suppress character on the door suddenly trembled slightly. In the next moment, a strand of terrifying force swept out towards the ponytailed woman. The ponytailed woman's beautiful brows knit together slightly when she witnessed this scene, and then she suddenly stabbed with her spear. Boom! With the thrust of the spear, that was the terrifying power instantly dissipated into thin air. The ponytailed woman's body trembled as she directly charged towards the door of light. At this moment, the word, suppress, once again erupted with a terrifying force that blasted towards the ponytailed woman. The ponytailed woman's expression was calm as she raised her hand and brandished her spear. Boom! The terrifying power was shattered. Just as the ponytailed woman was about to rush into the light gate, a shadow suddenly appeared in the light gate. In the next moment, a fist print headed straight for the ponytailed woman. The ponytailed woman's eyes flashed with hostility as she thrust out her spear. Rumble! The door of light suddenly trembled violently, and a terrifying force spread out in all directions like waves. It didn't take long for the entire stellar region to seethe with excitement. Meanwhile, the shadow in front of the ponytailed woman gradually became material. It was a woman as well. She wore a tight black robe, had a tall and slender figure, and had a triangular hairpin on her head. The black-robed woman's fist was pressing down on the ponytailed woman's spear. Meanwhile, the black-robed woman suddenly smashed her fist forward. The ponytailed woman's eyes narrowed slightly as she suddenly twisted her right hand. Bang! Two forces suddenly erupted, and then the starry sky in the surroundings warped in an instant. A wisp of surprise flashed through the black-robed woman's eyes when she noticed that her punch was actually unable to blast the ponytailed woman back. At this moment, the suppress character above their heads suddenly trembled. In the next moment, an extremely terrifying force blasted towards the black-robed woman. A wisp of hostility flashed through the black-robed woman's eyes when she witnessed this scene, and then she suddenly smashed her left palm forward. Rumble! A palm print soared into the sky and blasted against that terrifying force. Bang! A wave of energy suddenly shook the surroundings, and then the black-robed woman was blasted 300 m back. After she stopped moving, she suddenly charged forward and smashed her fist towards the suppress character. Bang! As soon as she smashed her fist forward, the suppress character trembled violently, and then traces of cracks appeared on it. The ponytailed woman gazed at the black-robed woman. She didn't speak nor did she attack. A wisp of disdain flashed through the black-robed woman's eyes as she gazed at the suppress character. This is the so-called 6 syllables of truth? How laughable! As she spoke, she suddenly vanished on the spot. In the next moment, a fist shot towards the suppress character. Meanwhile, the suppress character vanished as well. Rumble! A terrifying force suddenly erupted here, and then the black-robed woman retreated repeatedly. She stopped when she retreated 30 kilometers away, and the cracks on the suppress character were growing larger and larger. The black-robed woman glanced coldly at the suppress character, and then she spoke fiercely, "You're dreaming if you think you can suppress us with just a single character." She didn't attack again, and she turned around and walked towards the door of light instead. As if she'd thought of something, she turned around and glanced coldly at the ponytailed woman before she spoke with disdain, "Just you wait." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked towards the door of light. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from afar. "Wait!" The black-robed woman turned around, and a woman dashed over from afar. It didn't take long for the woman to arrive before the black-robed woman. The woman wore a short-sleeved shirt, long pants, and small cloth shoes, and there was a small cloth bag hanging diagonally from her waist. The person who had arrived was Qin Guan. Qin Guan looked at the black-robed woman and smiled faintly. "Miss, my name is Qin Guan." The black-robed woman looked at Qin Guan and didn't speak. Qin Guan smiled and said, "I want to do business in your endless universe." The black-robed woman was expressionless. "Get lost." Upon hearing that, Qin Guan frowned slightly, and she put her right hand into the small cloth bag. Chapter 24-24. The woman laughed coldly when she witnessed this scene, and her eyes were filled with disdain. "What? You want to fight?" Qin Guan was slightly displeased. "Fight? What fight? I'm a lady." The woman gazed at Qin Guan and was about to speak when Qin Guan suddenly withdrew a weapon and pulled the trigger. Bang! A ray of white light swept through the surroundings. The woman's pupils constricted abruptly, and then she suddenly opened her palm and clenched it tightly. After that, she roared furiously and smashed her fist forward. Bang! A ray of black light surged out from her fist like an erupting volcano. Rumble! Suddenly, a deafening rumble resounded throughout this expanse of the starry sky, and then the woman was blasted 30 kilometers away. She just stopped moving when another ray of white light blasted over. The woman was astounded when she witnessed this scene, and then she suddenly drew a circle in front of her with her right hand. Defend! A black shield suddenly condensed into form. Bang! As a barrier of light exploded apart, the black shield before the woman trembled violently, and then the expanse of space she resided in started to boil like boiling oil. It was an extremely shocking sight. Meanwhile, Qin Guan suddenly withdrew a huge pile of fist-sized divine objects from within her pouch, and she didn't even spare a glance at them before tossing them at the woman. After that, She hurriedly covered her ears with both hands. Bang, 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 bang. Numerous explosions resounded like thunderclaps in the distance, and then the entire expanse of the starry sky started to tremble violently as if an earthquake had occurred. Moreover, traces of cracks had actually appeared on the space in the surroundings. The woman with the ponytail glanced at Qin Guan and remained silent. A short moment later, the space in the surroundings returned to normal. At this moment, the woman was still there, but only her soul remained. A black talisman floated in the center of her forehead, and it was exactly that talisman that had protected her soul. The woman gazed at Qin Guan and was slightly dazed. "What's that?" Qin Guan blinked. "You're not dead yet." With that, she placed her right hand into the pouch. After fumbling around for a long time, she suddenly pulled out a round ball that looked like a watermelon. However, it was black and there was a long string at the top of the ball. The expression of the woman in the black dress instantly changed when she saw the black ball. "What the hell is this?" Qin Guan grinned. "Star bullet." With that, she snapped her fingers with her right hand, and a flame rose from her fingertips. Then, she ignited the thread at the top of the star bomb. Sizzle! After the thread was ignited, Qin Guan quickly let go, turned around, and ran. As if she had thought of something, she glanced at the ponytailed woman in the distance and shouted, "Run!" The ponytailed woman hesitated for a moment, then turned around and ran. In the distance, the woman in the black dress was slightly stupefied. What the hell? Right at this moment, the star bomb suddenly transformed into a black ray of light that shot towards the woman in the black dress. The woman's expression changed drastically when she witnessed this scene. At this moment, she sensed the aura of death, and she wanted to flee. However, it was too late because the star bomb had arrived in front of her. A wisp of viciousness flashed through her eyes when she realized she couldn't flee, and then she roared furiously as she suddenly charged forward and smashed her fist forward. At this moment, she chose to go head-on against it. Bang! Suddenly, this expanse of the starry sky shook violently, and then a mushroom cloud that was over 3 kilometers wide shot into the sky and shot into the depths of the starry sky. At the same time, the starry sky in an area of over 10 kilometers cracked apart like a mirror that had suffered a heavy blow. It was an extremely shocking sight. Just like that, the force raged on for an entire 15 minutes before this expanse of the starry sky slowly returned to calm, and the space in the surroundings was repaired by an unknown force as well. Meanwhile, Qin Guan and the ponytailed woman appeared here once more, and the woman in the black dress was gone. Moreover, countless cracks had appeared on the door of light, and something seemed to be surging within it. The ponytailed woman couldn't help but glance at Qin Guan when she witnessed this scene. That star bomb of hers had almost destroyed the door of light. After all, it was a barrier that the Daoist's master had personally set up all those years ago. Qin Guan clapped his hands. After that, he turned around to look at the ponytailed woman and grinned, "Martial God and hello." The ponytailed woman was martial god Enlanjing. Enlanjing glanced at Qin Guan and nodded as a form of greeting. Qin Guan gazed at the door of light, and then he smiled, "Martial God, have you come here to investigate the boundless universe as well?" Enlanjing nodded. Qin Guan blinked. "Do you want to go in and have a look with me?" Enlanjing glanced at the door of light in the distance and nodded. Qin Guan smiled. "Let's go." As soon as she finished speaking, she floated directly towards the door of light. Enlanjing followed her over as well. It didn't take long for them to vanish on the spot. Not long after the two of them vanished, a woman suddenly walked out from within the door of light. She wore a tight violet robe, and her thin waist was tied up by a silk belt. It was so slim that it could be grasped in one's hand. Her long hair hung casually behind her, and there were 2 horns on her head. She was very cute. She held a folding fan in her right hand, and there was a painting of mountains and rivers inscribed on the fan. When the woman appeared here, the suppress character on the door of light suddenly trembled, and then a ray of white light swept towards the woman. The violet-robed woman didn't even spare it a glance and just waved the folding fan in her hand. Bang! The white light shattered, and the suppress character exploded into pieces and vanished from the world. The violet-robed woman's expression was calm as she walked slowly towards the distance, and it didn't take long for her to vanish into the starry sky. A long time passed before a sigh resounded. King Kaoshan is finished. The midworld. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the peak of a mountain. His eyes were slightly closed, and he seemed like an old monk in meditation. Just like that, Yi Xian sat from sunrise to sunset, and then from sunset to sunrise. A strand of sword intent slowly drifted around his body. The mortal world sword intent. As Guanxian Academy grew stronger and stronger, Yi Xian's mortal world sword intent grew stronger at a terrifying speed. Because he was now the dean of Guanxian Academy, and everyone in the academy believed in him. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. He opened his palm, and a strand of sword intent suddenly transformed into a sword that shot into the sky. A sword cry suddenly resounded in the depths of the starry sky. At this moment, Yi Xian slowly stood up. He opened his palm, and the sword fell into his hand. Yi Xian took a deep breath, and a terrifying aura suddenly swept out from his body, but it quickly dissipated. Paramount Realm. At this moment, he had reached the Paramount Realm. Yi Xian looked at the sword in his hand that was condensed from the mortal world sword intent. He was a little shocked because he realized that his mortal world sword intent was very strong, so strong that it made his heart palpitate. At this moment, Emissary Zhang appeared beside Yi Xian, and he bowed slightly. Dean. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and said softly, "How is the academy in the mid-world now?" Emissary Zhang smiled. "Very good." Yi Xian asked again, "What about the Yang clan?" Emissary Zhang said in a deep voice, "The Yang clan is helping us. With their help, we have now established academies in countless universes. It won't be long before our Guanxian Academy spreads throughout the entire universe." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said, "Is there any trouble?" Emissary Zhang smiled. "It's just a small matter. We can handle it." Yi Xian turned around to glance at Emissary Zhang and smiled. "Brother Zhang, what's your position in the academy now?" Emissary Zhang shook his head and smiled. "I don't have any position in the academy, and I'm just assisting Miss Qing Qiu." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Then I won't give you a position for now. You'll just listen to Miss Qing Qiu's orders." Emissary Zhang nodded. "All right." Actually, he didn't care about his position, because everyone knew that he was Yi Xian's trusted follower, so who would dare to not give him face? Yi Xian spoke abruptly. "Come, let's go take a stroll." Emissary Zhang hurriedly nodded. "All right." Yi Xian vanished on the spot with Zhang Shi, and it didn't take long for Yi Xian to arrive at Guanxian Academy in the midworld. Guanxian Academy was built on top of a mountain range. This mountain range was Guanxian Academy's territory, and it was extremely huge. Yi Xian arrived at the main peak, which was the main courtyard of Guanxian Academy. Just as he approached the main courtyard, Yi Xian heard the sound of people reading. Emissary Zhang, who was beside Yi Xian, smiled. "Dean, this is morning reading. Just like Guanxian Academy in the Universe of Gods, we also have a literature department and a Wuxia department. Of course, people from the literature department can also practice martial arts, and people from Wuxia can also come to the literature department." Yi Xian asked, "Are there people from Wuxia willing to come to study literature?" Emissary Zhang nodded. "Yes. We have an examination every month, and people from Wuxia not only have a martial examination, but they also have a literature examination. Therefore, people from Wuxia must also study literature. Our academy has an elimination system, and once you fail, you'll be eliminated. Now, our Guanxian Academy can be said to have the best benefits among the major forces, so countless people are trying their best to join us." Yi Xian nodded slightly, and then asked, "What are the criteria?" Emissary Zhang said, "When we accept people other than those with great talent, we will also choose those with especially good temperament and perseverance. These people might not have great talent, but if they have a good temperament and are willing to work hard, they won't be too bad." Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Emissary Zhang smiled. "Dean, you've never appeared here before. This time, you have to go and meet them." As he said that, he paused for a while before continuing. Miss Qing Qiu mentioned this previously, saying that you have to show your face when you have time. Otherwise, it's a little unreasonable that you, as the dean, have never shown your face after the academy was built. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Great." Emissary Zhang was about to speak, but at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned his head. At the foot of the mountain not far away, there was a youth kneeling there. The youth looked to be only 11 or 12 years old, and he was kneeling there just like that. Yi Xian was a little surprised. "This is..." Emissary Zhang said in a deep voice, "This youth's name is Lu Feng. He was eliminated not long ago, but he is unwilling to leave, so he is kneeling here." Yi Xian asked, "Why was he eliminated?" Emissary Zhang said, "He failed the written test." Yi Xian thought for a while, and then disappeared on the spot. Emissary Zhang hurriedly followed. Yi Xian and Emissary Zhang appeared in front of the youth. The youth raised his head to look at Yi Xian and Emissary Zhang, and then retracted his gaze. Yi Xian had never appeared in the academy, so this youth did not know Yi Xian. As for Emissary Zhang, he also rarely appeared in the academy, and even if he did, it was to guide the higher-ups in their work. Yi Xian smiled. "You don't like to study?" The youth raised his head to look at Yi Xian. "What's the use of studying? In this world, the strong are respected, and having a big fist is the way." Yi Xian smiled. "Then do you think your fist is big enough now?" The youth was expressionless. "Not enough." Yi Xian nodded. "You're right. Most of the time, having a big fist is the way. But your fist is not big enough now, isn't it?" The youth clenched his fists and remained silent. Yi Xian turned to look at Emissary Zhang. "How are his results in Wuyuan?" Emissary Zhang said, "Top 5. Yi Xian smiled. "You are only in the top 5, and the people before you have all gone to study and abide by the rules of the academy. What right do you have to disobey them?" The youth raised his head to look at Yi Xian. "What's the use of studying?" Yi Xian smiled. "There are many uses, such as understanding, distinguishing between right and wrong, and having one's own thoughts. Of course, the most important thing is for us to cultivate our moral character and have a kind heart." A trace of hostility flashed in the youth's eyes. "I don't think these are of any use. I only know that my fist is not hard enough. If my fist is hard enough, I can change the rules of the academy. My fist is my reason, and it is everyone's reason." Hearing this, Emissary Zhang frowned. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then said, "You think the same as I did before. If I give you a chance to re-enter the academy, are you willing to change yourself and study?" The youth suddenly bowed deeply. "I am willing." Emissary Zhang was speechless. Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 24-25. I'm willing. Yi Xian was speechless as he looked at the young man in front of him. Of course, he found it funny. This young man seemed to be simple-minded, but he was actually very meticulous. Obviously, the other party had discovered that his and Envoy Zhang's identities were not simple. Yi Xian smiled. "Do you know who I am?" Lu Feng bowed deeply. "Dean." Yi Xian was a little curious. "How did you recognize me?" Lu Feng thought for a moment and said, "They said that the dean is very handsome and elegant." As he said this, he glanced at Yi Xian. "You are very handsome." Envoy Zhang. Yi Xian was stunned at first, then he laughed and said, "Let's go to the academy." Lu Feng stood up and bowed deeply. "Thank you, Di." After saying this, he quickly walked into the academy. Envoy Zhang looked at Lu Feng in the distance, wanting to say something but hesitated. Yi Xian said softly, "Are you worried?" Envoy Zhang nodded. Yi Xian smiled. "This young man is very meticulous and flexible. He is a good seedling, but he has a ruthless and extreme nature in his bones. It's fine if he is ruthless, but that extreme nature of his, we need to guide him." Envoy Zhang hesitated for a moment and said, "What if I can't guide him?" Yi Xian smiled slightly. "That's because we are useless." After saying this, he turned and walked into the distant academy. After a moment of silence, Envoy Zhang followed. After entering the academy, Yi Xian looked around. It had to be said that the academy was built very elegantly, especially the literature faculty. Everywhere was filled with the fragrance of books. Not only that, but the literature faculty also had a strong atmosphere of study. There were more than 10,000 people in the Guanxian Academy in the Middle World. It could be said that all the great geniuses of the Middle World were gathered here. Of course, it was also because the welfare of the Guanxian Academy was too good. If they wanted cultivation resources, they would have them. If they wanted cultivation techniques, they would have them. Therefore, countless geniuses and geniuses hoped to join Guanxian Academy. In order to not let their families fall behind, the major forces sent their geniuses and geniuses to Guanxian Academy. A monstrous genius with a bright future would be able to help his own family. It was also because of this reason that Guanxian Academy had an extremely good relationship with the forces of various universes. Of course, the main reason was that Guanxian Academy itself was too strong, so strong that countless forces didn't dare to have any ill intentions. After strolling around, Yi Xian left the academy with envoy Zhang. Yi Xian left the medium world and came to the universe of gods. The universe of gods was now completely under the control of Guanxian Academy. This was because the Guanchuan Academy in the universe of gods was the headquarters. Yi Xian didn't return to the academy directly. Instead, he went to the Immortal City. As soon as he arrived at the Immortal City, a woman appeared in front of him. This person was the current city lord of the Immortal City, Xian Gudian. Seeing Xian Gudian, Yi Xian faintly smiled. "Long time no see." Xian Gudian glared at Yi Xian. "I thought you forgot about me." Yi Xian laughed. "Even if I forget myself, I won't forget you." Xian Gudian rolled her eyes at Yi Xian, but the smile on her face became a little wider. Yi Xian softly said, "How have you been recently?" Xian Gudian slightly nodded. "Good." Yi Xian smiled. "You didn't miss me?" Xian Gudian glared at Yi Xian. "Don't say such frivolous words." Yi Xian laughed heartily. Without any hesitation, he grabbed Immortal Ancient. He grabbed Xian Gudian's hand and walked into the distance. Envoy Zhang quickly retreated to the side. Being grabbed by Yi Xian, Xian Gudian's face immediately turned red. She gently pulled her hand away, but seeing that she couldn't pull it out, she rolled her eyes at Yi Xian and let Yi Xian hold her hand. The two didn't speak, just holding hands and walking into the distance. After a long time, Xian Gudian suddenly leaned her head on Yi Xian's shoulder and softly said, "I thought you forgot about me." Yi Xian shook his head. "How could that be?" Xian Gudian raised her head to look at Yi Xian. "Do you like me?" Yi Xian nodded. Xian Gudian grinned, and then she slowly closed her eyes. "Enough." Yi Xian smiled, and then he held Xian Gudian's hand tightly. Needless to say, Yi Xian sighed with emotion. He noticed that he was truly a coward when it came to dealing with relationships. If you like someone, then you like them. Why act coy? If you don't like them, then you shouldn't have tried to seduce them in the first place. But if you do like them, then go for them. Most of the time, women aren't afraid of beasts, they're afraid of people that are worse than beasts. Xian Gudian suddenly asked, "How many people do you like?" Yi Xian's face froze when he heard this. Xian Gudian stared at Yi Xian and waited for Yi Xian's answer. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "When I'm with you, you're the one I like the most." Xian Gudian was stunned, and then she glared at Yi Xian but didn't ask any further questions. Yi Xian roared with laughter. After accompanying Xian Gudian for a stroll, they parted ways. Xian Gudian grinned as she watched Yi Xian vanish into the horizon, and then she gazed at the little wooden figure in her hand. The little wooden figure looked exactly like her, and it had been personally carved by Yi Xian. She gazed at the little wooden figure for a long time before she turned around and left. She was happy on this day, because Yi Xian wasn't vague anymore, and he'd acknowledged her. After he left ancient Immortal City, Yi Xian returned to Mystery Observer Academy. This place was very familiar. After he entered the academy, Yi Xian saw the dean of the civil department, Shu Xian. Shu Xian bowed slightly to Yi Xian. "Dean." Yi Xian smiled. "Elder Shu, there's no need for such empty greetings the next time you see me." However, Shu Xian shook his head. These are the rules, and they must be obeyed. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Do as you wish. As soon as he finished speaking, he glanced at the surroundings. Now, Mystery Observer Academy had expanded by at least 100 times, and it was still expanding incessantly, because there was an endless stream of powers joining the academy. Yi Xian suddenly said, the Imperial Yin clan and the others I invited didn't cause any trouble after joining the academy, right? Shu Xian hurriedly shook his head. No. They all abide by the rules. Yi Xian smiled. That's good. He was most afraid that those people would cause trouble after joining Mystery Observer Academy. Shu Xian said solemnly, they're all managed by Qing Qiu. Yi Xian nodded. In Mystery Observer Academy, only Qing Qiu could manage those people, especially the Heavenly Clan. The two from the Heavenly Clan were true self-realm experts. Even in the Yang clan, they were considered top-notch experts. At this moment, the two from the Heavenly Clan appeared in front of Yi Xian. Upon seeing Yi Xian, they hurriedly bowed. Greetings, Patriarch. Yi Xian sized them up. Then he said with a smile, have you gotten used to the academy? Both of them hurriedly nodded. Yi Xian laughed and said, I still don't know the two of you. How should I address you? The golden-armored man holding the sword on the left hurriedly said, this subordinate is Azwa, and the one holding the saber is called Guyu. Yi Xian nodded. Both of you are true self-realm experts, and you're the existences with the highest martial strength in Mystery Observer Academy. So, I'll leave the safety of Mystery Observer Academy to you. Besides that, both of you can help guide the students of the academy when you're free. If you guide them with your strength, they'll benefit greatly. Azwa hurriedly said, all right. As soon as he finished speaking, he hesitated. Yi Xian smiled and said, just say what you want to say. Azwa said in a low voice, Patriarch, we thought we had no more clansmen in the past, but we searched a few days ago, and we noticed that some branches of our heavenly clan didn't participate in the battle all those years ago. So, some of our clansmen are still alive in the world, and we want them to join the academy. Yi Xian smiled. Of course. That's a good thing. Azwa hurriedly bowed deeply. Thank you, Patriarch. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. I know what all of you are thinking. Because I'm not from the Heavenly Clan, all of you have many worries. But I want to tell all of you that I'm the Patriarch of the Heavenly Clan now, and the matters of the Heavenly Clan are my matters. Besides that, I won't always be the Patriarch of the Heavenly Clan. In the future, I'll find a suitable opportunity to allow the members of your Heavenly Clan to be the Patriarch. Azwa and Guyu were stunned. In the next moment, they revealed panic on their faces and were about to say something when Yi Xian said, the Patriarch of the Heavenly Clan naturally belongs to a member of the Heavenly Clan. Of course, I'll always take care of the Heavenly Clan. Azwa was slightly hesitant. Actually, he and Guyu naturally wanted a member of the Heavenly Clan to be the Patriarch. But now, they were very clearly aware that only Yi Xian could lead the Heavenly Clan forward. Meanwhile, Guyu, who hadn't spoken until now, spoke abruptly. I have an idea. We're entirely capable of finding a beautiful woman from the clan to marry the Patriarch, and the child that the two of you give birth to will be the Patriarch. Isn't that the best of both worlds? Yi Xian's face instantly darkened. Are you trying to take advantage of my body? After Guyu finished speaking, he felt that his idea was simply excellent. He immediately smiled. Patriarch, I think that's a good idea. Very good. Yi Xian suddenly waved his hand. My son can't be the Patriarch of the Heavenly Clan. Guyu was somewhat puzzled. Yi Xian said indifferently, because I can't give birth to a son for now. With that he turned and left. Guyu was speechless. Give birth to a son? Yi Xian was also speechless. Every time he was with Taoba Yen, he actually didn't take any precautions, but Taoba Yen had never been able to conceive. At first, he was somewhat puzzled, but he gradually understood. His child might be the next person with the mandate of heaven. Therefore, he might have to be with the right person in order to give birth. But the problem was, who was the right person? Try one by one? Thinking of this, Yi Xian hurriedly shook his head. He suddenly realized that he seemed to be a little too lecherous. Just as Yi Xian was about to leave, a purple-robed woman suddenly appeared in the distance. Seeing this, Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Meanwhile, Zhua and Gu Yu directly stood in front of Yi Xian. The purple-robed woman suddenly swept her fingers together. Rumble! Before Zhua and Gu Yu, who were already at the true self realm, could react, they were directly blasted several million zhang away. Seeing this, Yi Xian did not hesitate at all. He immediately raised his hands. I surrender. I won't resist. Chapter 24-26. Needless to say, Yi Xian was slightly dazed at this moment. What sort of experts were Zhua and Gu Yu? They were experts at the true self realm, and they were experts with the highest realms he'd ever seen. However, they'd actually been instantly blasted flying just like that? The rule of 3 days had come again. Yi Xian was speechless. After Qing left, he wouldn't be able to stay cool for another 3 days. Yi Xian restrained his thoughts and gazed at the woman before him. She wore a tight violet robe, had long hair that hung loosely on her shoulders, and had 2 horns on her head. Yi Xian was just about to speak when the woman suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he suddenly vanished on the spot. Instant invincibility. He directly leaped out of this current universe. Meanwhile, the woman's hand had strangely grabbed his throat, and then she suddenly exerted force. She didn't waste her breath at all. Bang! A terrifying force spread throughout Yi Xian's body. However, Yi Xian was invincible in this instant. The woman's beautiful brows knit together slightly when she witnessed this scene. On the other hand, Yi Xian was astounded. At this moment, he was invincible. However, he noticed that the area armor he wore had actually cracked into the shape of a spiderweb. Who's this woman? Yi Xian didn't have the time to think, and he suddenly stabbed with his sword. 4 afterimages appeared around the woman. In the next moment, 4 rays of light slashed down towards her. The rays of light tore through and shattered everything. The woman suddenly flicked her sleeve. Rumble! An expanse of rays of light shattered, and the 4 afterimages were blasted back 30 kilometers. Yi Xian's pupils constricted when he witnessed this scene, and he was astounded in his heart. After she blasted the 4 afterimages back, the woman suddenly vanished on the spot. In the next moment, 4 violet afterimages flashed past. In the distance, the 4 afterimages that Yi Xian had released had suddenly transformed into rays of light that vanished on the spot. Heda! Bang! Bang! Suddenly, the 4 sword lights exploded, and the 4 sword-wielding shadows disappeared. At the sight of this, Yi Xian's expression darkened. Who was this woman? The violet-robed woman turned around to look at Yi Xian, and then she suddenly made a grabbing motion with her right hand. Boom! Just like that, Yi Xian was forcefully pulled out from that unknown space-time by a terrifying force. As soon as he came out, the purple-robed woman appeared in front of him. Yi Xian fiercely slashed down with his sword. Not only did he release all of his sword intent, he even activated his bloodline. Apart from that, he also activated the mortal spiritual energy. This sword strike caused the world to change colors. However, this sword stopped when it was half an inch away from the purple-robed woman's eyebrows. This was because 2 fingers had caught the green profound sword. Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this, and his figure trembled as he retreated explosively. However, in the next moment, a fist smashed directly against his chest. Boom! Yi Xian's body bent like a fully drawn bow, and the armor he wore trembled violently at this moment, and then it exploded into countless pieces. Rumble! In an instant, Yi Xian's body had been blasted tens of thousands of meters away. After stopping, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head and was about to attack. At this moment, the purple-robed woman had appeared in front of him. Seeing the purple-robed woman, Yi Xian's face darkened. Dimensional reduction strike. The woman in front of him was absolutely not someone he could resist at this moment. This was the first time he had seen someone who could ignore instant of invincibility and destroy Ya's armor. The big boss had appeared again. Yi Xian was silent. Damn it. Why didn't she come to find me when Qing was here? Now, I'm finished. Since I can't beat her, I'll reason with her. Yi Xian was about to speak when the purple-robed woman suddenly flicked her sleeve. In the next moment, she and Yi Xian directly disappeared. Within Guanxian Academy, Shu Xian was completely stunned as he looked at the distant horizon. The dean was taken away just like that? At this moment, Azwa and Gu Yu appeared by Shu Xian's side. Azwa said solemnly, "That's the boundless universe." The boundless universe? Shu Xian suddenly said, "Quickly inform Qing Qiu." Soon, within the academy, a talisman shot into the sky. Shu Xian's eyes were filled with worry as he looked at the horizon. Azwa and Gu Yu's expressions were incomparably solemn. The purple-robed woman's strength was truly terrifying. They were both true self-realm experts, but in front of her, they didn't even have the ability to fight back. Azwa said softly, "It should be some super big boss." Gu Yu hesitated for a moment and then said, "The Patriarch." Azwa was silent for a moment and then said, "The Patriarch is thick-skinned enough. He should be able to turn danger into safety." Gu Yu turned to look at Azwa. "Are you serious?" Azwa. In a certain corner of the academy, Gu Ran looked up at the horizon. Her fists were tightly clenched, and her eyes were filled with anger and unwillingness. Yi Xian had just returned to the academy, and then she'd come here. She was just about to come see Yi Xian after she finished discussing things with Yi Xian. However, Yi Xian had been taken away before she could finish discussing things with him. She was powerless to do anything, and she could only watch as Yi Xian was taken away. That feeling of powerlessness stabbed deeply at her. A short while later, Gu Ran took a deep breath while a wisp of a firm expression flashed through her eyes, and then she turned around and left. It didn't take long for the Yang clan to find out that Yi Xian had been taken away. In a certain stellar region, the purple-robed woman was tearing through space with Yi Xian, and it wasn't long before she brought Yi Xian with her to the entrance to the boundless universe. Right when she was about to enter with Yi Xian, a ray of light suddenly slashed over from the side. The woman's beautiful brows knit together slightly, and then she turned around and flicked her sleeve. Bang! The ray of light was blocked. The woman turned around and saw a woman with a sword on her back walking over slowly from afar. It was exactly Situ Tingyun. The Yang clan was aware of what had happened to Yi Xian, so Ding Xiaoyao had sent Situ Tingyun over. A wisp of a cold glow flashed through the woman's eyes when she saw Situ Tingyun, and then she suddenly flicked her sleeve. Yi Xian was blasted to the side, but he wasn't able to move at all because a strand of terrifying force had enveloped him. Yi Xian's face sank because he noticed that he wasn't able to move at all, and even his bloodline energy had been forcefully suppressed. Who the hell was this woman? Yi Xian closed his eyes slowly. He'd encountered a formidable opponent this time. Situ Tingyun gazed at the woman and chuckled lightly, "The boundless universe." The woman's expression was calm as she slowly clenched her right hand. Meanwhile, Situ Tingyun suddenly pressed her fingers together, and then a sword suddenly shot into the sky from the sheath on her back. A ray of light formed a perfect arc in the sky as it slashed down towards the woman. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly smashed her fist forward. Bang! The sword was forcefully stopped. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly smashed her fist forward once more. Rumble! The space in the surroundings exploded apart as a fist suddenly smashed down towards Situ Tingyun. Meanwhile, Situ Tingyun suddenly drew her sword and slashed. Rumble! At the instant that her sword descended, the space in the surroundings was transformed into nothingness. However, the door of light was still there. Situ Tingyun gazed at the woman from afar, and there was a rare trace of seriousness in her eyes. Because her sword had shattered, the purple-robed woman glanced coldly at Situ Tingyun. Suddenly, her body turned illusory. Situ Tingyun's pupils constricted, and then she suddenly formed a sword seal with both hands. A moment later, she shouted, "Rise!" A sword howl suddenly reverberated through the heavens and the earth, and then numerous ethereal swords suddenly appeared here. In the next moment, countless rays of light crisscrossed and tore through the surroundings. The sound of space being torn apart resounded incessantly as this expanse of space was gradually being obliterated. Meanwhile, the countless rays of light were actually being obliterated bit by bit. At the same time, an afterimage was growing closer and closer to Situ Tingyun. It was the violet-robed woman. A wisp of light flashed through Situ Tingyun's eyes when she saw the woman. Suddenly, the woman stomped her right foot against the ground. Bang! Countless rays of light were instantly obliterated. In the next moment, the woman had appeared in front of Situ Tingyun, and then she smashed her fist forward like a bolt of lightning. Situ Tingyun immediately raised her sword to block it. Bang! Situ Tingyun's sword shattered, and her figure was blasted 30 kilometers away. At the same time, a few dozen rays of light slashed down towards the woman from a strange angle. The woman flicked her sleeve, and those rays of light were instantly blasted apart. At the same time, she stomped her right foot against the ground. Bang! The expanse of space where Situ Tingyun resided was instantly blasted apart. Situ Tingyun waved her sword about, and an expanse of light enveloped her. However, it was instantly obliterated. Rumble! Situ Tingyun was blasted back again. Meanwhile, the violet-robed woman suddenly flipped her right hand, and then she suddenly pressed it down. Rumble! The expanse of space above Situ Tingyun suddenly collapsed, and then a strand of terrifying force swept down. Situ Tingyun's eyes narrowed slightly as she opened her palm, and then a sword suddenly shot into the sky. Rumble! The sword forcefully blocked that terrifying force. At the same time, Situ Tingyun suddenly transformed into a ray of light that vanished on the spot. A strand of light suddenly stabbed towards the woman, and then she raised her arm to block it. Rumble! An expanse of light was blasted apart. The woman's right arm had forcefully blocked Situ Tingyun's sword. Meanwhile, Situ Tingyun suddenly slapped her left palm against the hilt of her sword. A ray of light surged out from the tip of her sword. However, the woman didn't move at all, and the rays of light were obliterated before they could even come into contact with her. Situ Tingyun's pupils constricted when she witnessed this scene, the myriad tribulation realm. The woman's right arm suddenly shook. Bang! Situ Tingyun was blasted over 30 kilometers away. Situ Tingyun's expression instantly became quite unsightly when she stopped moving, experiencing countless tribulations to temper one's body. I never expected that someone would really be able to accomplish that. The woman glanced at Situ Tingyun, and then her cherry lips parted slightly. Her attainments in the sword Dao are passable. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around to gaze at Yi Xian. In the next moment, she took Yi Xian with her and vanished on the spot. Situ Tingyun didn't hesitate to pursue them. However, she'd only just approached the door of light when a strand of terrifying force suddenly swept out, and then Situ Tingyun was blasted back. At the same time, the door of light suddenly closed. Situ Tingyun's brows knit together slightly. Why did that woman take Yi Xian away? Situ Tingyun was about to charge in when a voice suddenly resounded. She was only a clone just now, and she doesn't even possess a tenth of her true strength. Situ Tingyun's pupils constricted when she heard this. Chapter 24-27. The clone? Situ Tingyun glanced at the surroundings, but she didn't notice the person who'd spoken. A short while later, Situ Tingyun spoke in a low voice. Are you Master Daoist? The voice replied, yes. Situ Tingyun fell silent for a short while before she said, why did they capture him? Master Daoist said, this isn't something you can interfere in. Situ Tingyun's beautiful brows knit together slightly. She was just about to speak when a woman walked over slowly from afar. It was Qing Qiu. Qing Qiu's expression was calm as she walked towards the door of light. Meanwhile, the voice suddenly resounded, it's pointless for you to enter now unless you recover your strength immediately. But you know the consequences of doing that. Qing Qiu fell silent. The voice continued, he won't die for now. Situ Tingyun spoke in a low voice, will he die? The voice replied, to a certain extent, everyone will die, and he's no exception. It just depends on when. Situ Tingyun frowned slightly. Behind him. The voice sighed softly. Every single story will come to an end one day. Situ Tingyun seemed to have thought of something, and she fell silent. Qing Qiu suddenly said, "Why did they capture my older brother?" The voice fell silent for a short while before it said, "It's unknown for now." Qing Qiu frowned slightly. She opened her palm, and a sword appeared in it. "Meanwhile," the voice continued, "letting him go over isn't a bad thing. All of you are protecting him here, and it's detrimental to his growth. He won't have any backing there, and he'll have to rely on himself for everything. That's actually a good thing." Qing Qiu fell silent. The voice continued, "He's almost invincible here. Once he gets there, he won't have the Yang clan, Qing Qiu, or Guanxin Academy. He can only rely on himself." Situ Tingyun suddenly said, "Will they kill him?" The voice replied, "They won't." Situ Tingyun spoke in a low voice, "How can you be so sure?" The voice chuckled, "I won't say any more. It's a spoiler." Situ Tingyun frowned slightly, "What do you mean?" The voice was silent. Qing Qiu suddenly said, "Then I will wait here." The voice replied, "There's no need for that. Go to the academy and do your business. The more powerful your academy is, the more powerful his strength will be. As for him, I beg of you, leave him alone. If I continue to care about him, I won't be able to deal with him." The two women. The voice sighed softly and then disappeared completely. After an unknown period of time, Yixian slowly opened his eyes. As soon as he opened his eyes, he felt a dazzling light. Yixian frowned and quickly got up. He looked around. At this moment, he was on a circular platform and there were 10 suns above his head. Yixian was stunned and puzzled. What was this place? "Are you awake?" At this moment, a voice sounded in his ear. Yixian turned to look. Not far away, a little girl was looking at him. The little girl looked to be only 15 or 16 years old. She had 2 little braids and 2 horns on her head. Her eyes were like crescent moons and she was very beautiful. Yixian glanced at the little girl and did not say anything. However, he was calculating something in his heart. The little girl smiled slightly. "Hello. I'm Mo Ling." Yixian smiled. "Hello. I'm Yixian. You're really beautiful. Nice to meet you." Mo Ling was stunned and then said softly, "You're Yixian?" Yixian nodded. "Yes." Mo Ling giggled. "You're from the other side of the universe, right?" Yixian nodded. "Yes." Mo Ling sized up Yixian curiously and said, "Don't the people over there have horns?" Yixian glanced at the horns on Mo Ling's head and smiled. "We don't have horns on our side." Your horns are really beautiful. Can I touch them?" Mo Ling hurriedly shook her head and took a few steps back while she covered her horns with her hands. No. You can't touch them. The horns of a Great Spirit Race girl can't be touched by others." Great Spirit Race. Yixian pondered in his heart. A moment later, he looked at Mo Ling and was about to speak when a furious roar resounded from the side. Mo Ling, stay away from him." Yixian turned his head to look. As soon as he turned his head, a dreadful force swept towards him. Yixian frowned slightly and a trace of viciousness flashed through his eyes. With a command in his heart, a sword light slashed out. Rumble! A wave of sword light exploded out and an afterimage retreated repeatedly in front of Yixian, and it only stopped after moving over 30 m back. It was a man. The man was tall and wore a blue robe, and he was staring angrily at Yixian. Yixian sized him up and smiled. "What's your name?" The man roared furiously, "Damnable outlander! You aren't worthy of knowing my name." As he spoke, he clenched his right fist before charging forward and punching towards Yixian. As soon as the punch was thrown out, a terrifying blue light screen gushed out like a tide and crushed towards Yixian. In the distance, Yixian's eyes narrowed slightly as he opened his palm, and the azure profound sword appeared in his grasp. In the next moment, he stabbed it forward. A cold light flashed. Bang! The man was pushed over 1 kilometer back by Yixian's attack. As soon as the man stopped, an afterimage flashed in front of him, and in the next moment, a sword light slashed down. The man's pupils constricted as he raised his arms to block in front of him. At the same time, a blue light surged out from within his body. Rumble! An explosion resounded as the blue light in front of the man shattered. At the same time, the man's arms were shattered as a sword was pressed against the space between his eyebrows. The man was first stunned before roaring furiously, "You dare?" Hiss. The sword pierced through the man's forehead. Bang! In an instant, the azure profound sword had completely absorbed the man's soul. It had been directly wiped out. Seeing this scene, Mo Ling said with a trembling voice, You killed him." Yi Xian nodded. "He hit me first, did you see that?" Mo Ling hesitated for a moment before saying, "He's Elder Shan's grandson." Yi Xian blinked. "Is he very strong?" Mo Ling nodded. "Very strong." Yi Xian thought for a moment before looking around and was about to flee. Right at this moment, the space-time in front of him split apart, and in the next moment, an old man appeared in front of him. As soon as the old man appeared and was about to speak, Yi Xian raised his hand and slashed. He was obviously here for revenge, so he naturally had to make the first move. As soon as the old man appeared, he was stunned when he saw Yi Xian raise his hand and slash towards him. What was going on? There was no time to think as the old man's right hand suddenly shook and a spear stabbed out. Bang! The spear and spear split apart as soon as they came into contact. Right at this moment, Yi Xian's figure shook and he appeared in the universe. The space-time he was in right now was not the current universe, nor was it the boundless universe, but an unknown space-time domain. Without wasting any time, Yi Xian swung his sword down. Four afterimages appeared around the old man, and in the next moment, the four afterimages slashed down at the same time. Seeing this, the old man's pupils constricted and he was extremely shocked. He furiously roared and slashed out with his spear, using all his strength. The four afterimages slashed and the old man was sliced into several pieces. He was forcefully wiped out. At this moment, Yi Xian appeared in front of the old man. On the side, Mo Ling suddenly said with a trembling voice, "You killed Elder Shan." Yi Xian nodded, "Yes." Mo Ling said solemnly, "Elder Shan is from the ancient faction. You killed him and the ancient faction will not let you off. We're finished." Yi Xian was silent, feeling furious. Is there a point? Is there a point? After beating the young, the old comes. After beating the old, a group of old comes? Without thinking much, Yi Xian turned and flew on his sword, wanting to escape. However, just as he reached the horizon, a terrifying power swept down. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes and opened his palm. The cyan profound sword brought along the sword intent of the human realm and soared into the sky. However, the moment the cyan profound sword came into contact with the terrifying power, it was forced back. Rumble! In an instant, Yi Xian was forced back to his original position by the terrifying power. Yi Xian raised his head to look at the sky. A huge palm print had appeared in the sky, and it was floating there. Yi Xian was silent. He knew that it was the purple-robed woman who had captured him. On the side, Mo Ling suddenly said, "It was a martial monarch who brought you here." Yi Xian looked at Mo Ling. "Is it that purple-robed woman?" Mo Ling nodded. Yi Xian smiled. "She is your martial monarch?" Mo Ling nodded and said with reverence, "She is the strongest martial monarch in the history of our great spirit clan." Martial monarch? Yi Xian was silent for a moment, then said, "Do you know why she brought me here?" Mo Ling shook her head. "I don't know. She only told me to watch you." Yi Xian was stunned, then said, "She told you to watch me?" Mo Ling nodded. Yi Xian suddenly raised his head to look at the huge palm print. "This was done by you?" Mo Ling blinked. "That's right." Yi Xian was startled. You're that powerful?" It had to be said that he was still shocked, because he had thought that it was the purple-robed woman who did it. He never expected that it was not her, but the little girl in front of him. Mo Ling shook her head. "I'm not powerful. Martial monarchs are powerful. I can't even defeat one of her clones." Yi Xian said solemnly, "Then why didn't you stop me when I killed them?" Mo Ling giggled. Why should I stop you? Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Aren't you two from the same clan? Mo Ling nodded. We are from the same clan, but Martial Monarch only told me to watch you and not let you escape, but did not tell me to protect them. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. Mo Ling looked at Yi Xian. Don't you run away. Otherwise, I will hit you. If I use force, I might beat you to death. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then opened his palm and a Tonghulu appeared in his hand. Here. Mo Ling was slightly curious. You? This is? Yi Xian said seriously, this is the most precious treasure in our universe. Try it. Mo Ling looked at Yi Xian. You're giving it to me? Yi Xian nodded. Mo Ling was puzzled. Why? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then said, You're like my long-lost little sister. The moment I see you, I feel a sense of closeness. Mo Ling suddenly punched out. Before Yi Xian could react, he was punched in the abdomen. Boom. Yi Xian was instantly sent flying tens of feet away, then he was fixed on the spot by a terrifying power, and his body immediately split into a spider web. In the distance, Mo Ling looked at Yi Xian. Please don't insult my intelligence, I'm not an idiot, thank you. Yi Xian. Chapter 24-28. The little girl opened her palm and the candied fruit in Yi Xian's hand flew into her hand. She licked it and blinked her eyes. Not bad. Yi Xian. The little girl sat at the side and stared at Yi Xian. If you don't run, I won't hit you. Yi Xian thought for a moment, then sat down and started to heal his injuries. His recovery speed was very fast, and not long after, his body completely recovered. After recovering, he walked in front of Mo Ling and looked at her, smiling. Is it delicious? Mo Ling nodded. Delicious. Yi Xian smiled slightly. Can we chat? Mo Ling was silent for a moment, then said, Martial Monarch did not let me chat with you. Yi Xian asked, Then did she tell you not to chat with me? Mo Ling shook her head. Yi Xian smiled. Isn't that so? The things that Martial Monarch did not let you do, of course you cannot do, but the things that Martial Monarch did not tell you not to do, you can do, understand? Mo Ling looked at Yi Xian. This is sophistry. Yi Xian's expression froze. Why were the people of the boundless universe not easy to fool? At this time, Mo Ling suddenly smiled. However, what you said is reasonable, Yi Xian. Mo Ling looked at Yi Xian. She licked the candied fruit. Foreigner, what are you trying to say? I guess you want to understand our boundless universe? Yi Xian raised his thumb. So smart. Mo Ling smiled. The boundless universe is different from your side. We have many races here, but we are a whole. Everyone respects the boundless Lord. Hearing this, Yi Xian was silent. Evidently, the boundless universe was not scattered, but a whole. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and asked, Why did you attack that side back then? Mo Ling thought for a moment and said, Do you eat meat? Yi Xian nodded. Mo Ling smiled. Why do you want to eat meat? Yi Xian asked in a deep voice. Is this place no longer suitable for survival? Mo Ling's lips curled up. Foreigner, you're really smart. Yi Xian glanced at his surroundings and frowned. He discovered that there was still spiritual energy in the surroundings, and it wasn't bad either. At this moment, Mo Ling suddenly said, This is the great spirit race, and they are supported by spiritual veins. However, the outside world is no longer suitable for living. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Aren't you here? Why is the spiritual energy drying up? Mo Ling slightly shook her head. Because our clan developed too quickly back then, it caused us to plunder too much spiritual energy, causing us to not be able to develop continuously. So, at this point, she shook her head and sighed softly. Yi Xian nodded slightly. So, you guys have your eyes on that side. Mo Ling shrugged her shoulders. What can we do? It was all for survival. Just like how you eat pork, isn't it all for survival? Survival? Yi Xian looked around. This time, he looked very far and sure enough, in the depths of the starry sky, he saw countless dead and silent star domains. It was obvious that these places were no longer suitable for survival. Mo Ling suddenly asked, "Do you have anything else to ask?" Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and looked at Mo Ling. "According to what I know, the reason why you guys failed back then was because of the Daoist's master?" Mo Ling nodded, her gaze gradually turning cold. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Why did he forcefully interfere? Mo Ling said indifferently, "I don't know." Yi Xian asked again. "Then why did you capture me? Why didn't you capture the Daoist's master?" Mo Ling shook her head. "I don't know, it was the martial monarch who captured you. As for why she wanted to capture you, I don't know." Yi Xian frowned. At this time, Mo Ling suddenly asked, "It's my turn to ask you." Yi Xian looked at Mo Ling. "Ask." Mo Ling smiled and said, "Are there many people who can fight on your side?" Yi Xian nodded. Mo Ling was somewhat curious. The human race's king, sacred race's king and Tian clan's king are still alive? Yi Xian thought about it, then said, "I don't know about the sacred race's king, but the human race's king and Tian clan's king are still alive. Wasn't the human race and Tian clan's king him?" Mo Ling frowned. "It shouldn't be." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Are you going to continue attacking that side?" Mo Ling nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian felt a headache coming on. His current Guanxian Academy and Yang clan should be the strongest powers in that side of the universe. If these fellows wanted to attack that side, wouldn't that be the same as going against him? Could this be the reason why that woman had captured him? Mo Ling smiled and said, "You don't seem to be afraid." Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and said with a smile, "What am I afraid of? If you martial monarchs wanted to kill me, you wouldn't have captured me, right?" Mo Ling smiled and said, "Yes." Saying this, she stood up and clapped her hands, then said, "Do you have any more candied hawthorns?" Yi Xian. A moment later, Yi Xian laid down beside Mo Ling, his hands pillowed his head as he looked at the sky, thinking inwardly. He was currently in the paramount god realm, while the little girl beside him was in the true self realm. However, he found that this little girl was several times stronger than Zhua and the others. Evidently, the quality of the true self realm here was much higher than the current universe. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian turned to look at Mo Ling. "Where are your martial monarchs?" Mo Ling said, "They seem to be busy." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Did she say that we must stay here?" Mo Ling thought about it and shook her head. "She didn't." Yi Xian was about to speak when Mo Ling suddenly said, "Do you want to leave this place and go somewhere else?" Yi Xian hurriedly nodded, "I won't run." Mo Ling looked at Yi Xian, "You really won't run?" Yi Xian nodded, "I can't beat you, so why am I shaking my head? Aren't you looking for a fight?" Mo Ling giggled, "All right, then let's go play." Saying this, she stood up and left. Yi Xian followed. Great Spirit Race. Along the way, Yi Xian kept looking around. Soon, his expression became serious, because he found that there were a lot of strong people in this clan. He had already sensed the aura of dozens of true self-level strong people. This was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that he could feel the aura of unknown experts. It was clear that these were experts above the true self realm. And one great spirit race obviously could not represent the entire boundless universe. The martial monarch that brought him here might not be the strongest in the boundless universe. Mo Ling suddenly said, "I'll bring you to a place." Yi Xian was about to ask, but at this time, Mo Ling pulled Yi Xian's shoulder and disappeared. Not long later, Yi Xian and Mo Ling appeared on a huge stone plaza. This stone plaza was not just big, it was tens of thousands of feet long and wide. At the edge of the plaza, there were stone pillars that reached to the sky. In the center of the plaza, there was a huge stone platform. The stone platform was hundreds of feet long, and on top of the stone platform, there were two people engaged in a great battle. Because at this moment, there were two people fighting, and tens of thousands of people gathered around the stone platform. Yi Xian turned to look at Mo Ling. "This is?" Mo Ling smiled, "Divine Martial Platform." Yi Xian smiled, "Divine Martial Platform?" Mo Ling nodded. "This place is a training ground of my boundless lands. Only top geniuses have the qualifications to come here." As she spoke, she pointed to a stone pillar far away. There are a total of 36 stone pillars. Every stone pillar represents a person. Anyone who is on the list is a genius among geniuses of my boundless lands, a monster among monsters. Yixian smiled. What's your ranking? Mo Ling's smile froze. Yixian turned to look at the 36 stone pillars. Very quickly, his expression turned grave. Mo Ling. Not on the list. This terrifying little girl in front of him was actually not on the list. In this instant, cold sweat flowed down Yixian's forehead. Damn it, not only did he not last 3 days, he even became a little brother? Could it be that he was arranged by Daoist again? Daoist, Mo Ling said indifferently, although I am not on the list, I will be on it very soon. Yixian nodded. I believe you. Mo Ling turned to look at Yixian. Why do you believe me? Yixian smiled. In any case, I believe you. I feel that in the future, you will definitely not be any worse than your martial monarchs. No, you will even surpass your martial monarchs. Hearing that, Mo Ling rolled her eyes at Yixian and a smile appeared on her face. I'm not as outstanding as you say. As she spoke, she sized up Yixian and smiled. Although you are from a foreign land, you are still a pretty good person. Yixian, Mo Ling looked at the stage far away and said softly, these people are all very hardworking. Look at that guy on the left, he is called Chu Feng. In order to get on the list, he has already fought here for over 30 years. Over 30 years. Yixian raised his head to look at the stage far away. When he saw the man called Chu Feng, Yixian's expression instantly became serious. This man did not look very old, his upper body was naked, and his body was covered in injuries. However, the ruthlessness in his eyes caused others to feel fear. This was a ruthless person. Moreover, this person was at the true self realm. Yixian smiled bitterly in his heart. Were true self realm experts like cabbages? As if thinking of something, Yixian suddenly looked at the man fighting Chu Feng. It was a very skinny man, and his body was not very tall. It could even be said that he was short. However, when facing Chu Feng's storm-like attacks, this man was actually skillful and at ease. Not only did he easily dodge, he even occasionally counterattacked. Yixian's expression darkened. This man was even stronger because he could feel that this man was not using his full strength, while Chu Feng was already using his full strength. Boom! Just at this moment, the man suddenly punched Chu Feng's ribs from a strange angle. Bang! Under everyone's gazes, the man was directly sent flying, heavily smashing into the barrier around the stage. Defeated. On the stage, the man glanced at Chu Feng before turning and leaving. On the stage, Chu Feng's expression was somewhat ugly, but there was not the slightest bit of discouragement in his eyes. He tidied up a bit, then turned and walked towards the stage. Beside Yixian, Mo Ling suddenly said, Do you want to go play? Yixian said, Can I cheat? Mo Ling turned to look at Yixian. P.S. I don't even dare to speak without exploding. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.